The call came at 3 a.m., just as I was putting the finishing touches on my latest blog post about revolutionizing traditional pasta techniques. I almost ignored it. Who calls at this hour? But seeing Jackson's name flash across my screen after 5 years of silence made my hand freeze mid-keystroke. I'm Hayley, and until that moment, I was perfectly content being the voice behind The Rebel Chef, a culinary blog that had grown from a spite-driven project to a community of over 2 million followers. Funny how life works. Getting pushed out of my family's restaurant empire turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Hayley, Jackson's voice cracked. I need your help. The sound of my brother's desperation should have filled me with satisfaction. Instead, my stomach twisted into knots. It's 3 a.m, Jackson. We haven't spoken since you and Dad decided I wasn't fit to run the business because kitchens need a man's touch. The restaurants are failing, he paused, and I heard ice cubes clinking against glass. Clayton's been cooking the books. Health inspectors are breathing down our necks. I'm in over my head. I sat back in my chair, the blue light of my laptop screen illuminating the dark kitchen of my apartment. And now you want my help? That's rich. Please, he whispered. You're the only one who understands both the business and the food. Mum's a mess. And Dad, his voice trailed off. What about Dad? He had a stroke 3 months ago. He's in a care facility. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. Nobody had told me. Nobody had thought to call. I swallowed hard, pushing down the hurt. Why should I help you? Because despite everything, it's still our legacy, and because Clayton's not just stealing, he's destroying everything our grandparents built. My phone buzzed with an incoming email. I'm sending you proof, Jackson said. Bank statements, invoices, everything. It's bad, Hayley, really bad. I opened the attachments, scanning through documents that showed millions in unexplained transfers. My blood ran cold when I saw the dates. This had been happening even before I was pushed out. Does Clayton know you're calling me? No, Jackson replied. He thinks I'm too proud to ask for help, especially from my little sister. I laughed bitterly. Well, he got that part right. I saw your latest video, Jackson said quietly. The one about modernizing traditional techniques. It was brilliant. You watch my videos? Every single one. He cleared his throat. Look, I know I don't deserve your help, but this isn't about me. It's about the hundreds of people who work for us, their families, our family's legacy. My phone pinged again. This time it was Marley, my best friend and fellow food blogger. Girl, you up? Your pasta video just hit 500k views in 2 hours. I should have been excited. Instead, I was staring at the old family photo on my wall. All of us in the kitchen of our first restaurant, flour-covered and laughing, before everything fell apart. If I help, I said slowly, things will be different this time. I won't be sidelined or dismissed. Name your terms. I'll need to think about it. I paused, remembering something. That health inspection you mentioned, was it at the flagship restaurant? How did you know? Mohammed still sends me updates. He's been worried. Jackson swore under his breath. Clayton's going to lose it when he finds out you're involved. Good, I said, already opening my laptop to book a flight. He should be worried. I'm not the same person who left 5 years ago. When can you come? I looked at my calendar filled with blog deadlines and sponsorship meetings. I'll be there tomorrow. And Jackson. This time, I'm not leaving until I get what I deserve. After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of my kitchen, my mind racing. 5 years ago, I'd left with nothing but a broken heart and a determination to prove them wrong. Now I had a platform, a voice, and an army of followers who believed in my vision for the culinary world. My phone lit up with another message from Marley. Hey, why aren't you celebrating? This is huge. I typed back quickly. Change of plans, family emergency, need your help with something big. The prodigal daughter returns, she replied immediately. Count me in. Want me to start digging? Yes, I wrote. Everything you can find on Clayton Myers. Financial records, business dealings, everything. I closed my laptop and walked to the window, watching the city lights flicker in the pre-dawn darkness. Tomorrow, I'd walk back into the world that had rejected me, armed with knowledge, experience, and a determination to set things right. But first, I had a blog post to finish. After all, success is the best revenge, and I was about to serve mine piping hot. The familiar scent of garlic and rosemary hit me the moment I pushed open the heavy doors of Long's kitchen. 15 years of memories flooded back, learning to make pasta at my grandmother's side, experimenting with recipes late into the night, dreaming of the day I'd run this place. Welcome to... Oh! The hostess's rehearsed greeting died on her lips. Miss Haley? Hello, Sarah. I smiled, recognizing the teenager who used to bus tables part-time. You've grown. Before she could respond, my mother's voice cut through the dining room. Haley? She emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her hair had more grey than I remembered, and new wrinkles creased the corners of her eyes. Why didn't you tell me you were coming? Jackson called. I set my bag down. We need to talk. Mom's face tightened. Not here. She gestured toward the office. Sarah, hold any calls. The office looked exactly the same. Dark wood paneling, vintage cooking implements on the walls, the old desk where Dad used to do the books. Now, Clayton sat there looking up from his laptop with poorly concealed surprise. Well, well. He stood, straightening his expensive tie. The prodigal daughter returns. Clayton. I kept my voice neutral. Still wearing suits in a kitchen, I see. Some of us maintain professional standards. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Unlike certain internet personalities. Before I could respond, Jackson burst in. Haley, thank God! He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, shirt wrinkled. Clayton, we need the room. Of course, Clayton gathered his papers. I have a meeting with the bank anyway, we'll catch up later, Haley. As soon as the door closed, Mom rounded on me. What's going on? Why are you really here? Show her, I told Jackson. He pulled out the documents he'd sent me, spreading them across the desk. Mom's face grew paler with each page. This can't be right, she whispered. These numbers... They're right, I said. Clayton's been siphoning money for years. Meanwhile, the restaurants are failing health inspections because of cut corners and poor maintenance. But Clayton's been with us for 20 years, I know. I leaned forward. That's how he got away with it for so long. Trust and tradition, the same reasons you all thought a woman couldn't run this place. That's not fair, Mom protested. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone, showing them my latest blog statistics. 2 million followers, 5 cookbook deals, a culinary consulting firm, all built by the daughter you didn't think could handle the family business. Jackson slumped in his chair. We were wrong. I was wrong. But right now, we need your help. A knock at the door interrupted us. Mohammed, our head chef, poked his head in. Sorry to interrupt, but Clayton just left with all the pending invoices and the new supplier contracts. What? Jackson jumped up. That's not all. Mohammed glanced at me. The health inspector's coming back tomorrow. Clayton was supposed to handle the repairs they cited last time, but nothing's been done. Mom sank into a chair. We'll fail the inspection. No, we won't. I stood up, already rolling up my sleeves. Mohammed, gather the kitchen staff. Jackson, call our old supplier, the one Clayton replaced. Mom, we're going to need every cleaning supply in the building. What are you thinking? Jackson asked. We have 24 hours to get this place up to code. I turned to Mohammed. The walk-in cooler still acting up? He nodded. Temperatures all over the place. Clayton said the repair cost was too high. Call Mario's Refrigeration. Tell them it's for me. They owe me a favor for featuring them in my commercial kitchen series. Haley, Mom said softly. We can't afford. Yes, you can. I pulled up my banking app. Consider it an investment in my future share of the business. Their heads snapped up. What? You heard me. I'm not here just to help. I'm here to take my rightful place. 50-50 ownership with Jackson or I walk. The silence stretched thin. Finally, Jackson nodded. Done. Jackson, Mom protested. No, Mom. He stood beside me. Haley's right. This is her legacy too, and we need her. I saw the moment my mother's resistance crumbled. She looked at me. Really looked at me, for the first time in years. When did you become so strong? when you all forced me to be. I headed for the door. Now let's save this restaurant. Mohammed, gather everyone in the kitchen in 5 minutes. We've got work to do. As I walked through the dining room, I spotted Clayton watching through the front window, phone to his ear. Our eyes met, and I saw a flash of fear cross his face. Good. He should be afraid. Because this time, I wasn't just fighting for my place in the family business. I was fighting to expose every lie, every theft, every betrayal, and I had nothing left to lose. The temperature logs are completely falsified, Mohammed said, spreading papers across the prep table. Clayton made us record perfect readings even when the cooler was running hot. I ran my hand along the industrial refrigerator's gasket, feeling the warm air leak. How long? 6 months? Maybe more. He lowered his voice. 3 prep cooks quit because they refused to serve potentially spoiled food. Clayton replaced them with inexperienced staff willing to keep quiet. My phone buzzed. Marley's latest findings. Got something interesting, her message read. Clayton's opened 3 personal accounts in the past year. Deposits match missing inventory costs. The kitchen door swung open. Clayton strode in, his designer shoes clicking on the tile floor. Private kitchen meeting? How fascinating. Just catching up with old friends, I said, sliding the temperature logs under a cutting board. Reminiscing about proper food safety protocols. Speaking of protocols, he stepped closer. Accessing confidential business records without authorization could be considered corporate espionage. Threatening me, Clayton. Warning you as a friend. His smile was razor-sharp. We wouldn't want your lovely blog followers to hear about health code violations, would we? Mohammed stepped between us. The health inspector's here. Perfect timing. I'd spent all night with the staff, deep cleaning every surface, fixing what we could, documenting what we couldn't. Now it was showtime. The inspector, a stern woman named Rita, walked in with her tablet ready. Clayton moved to intercept her, but I was faster. Rita, welcome. I'm Hayley, the new co-owner. I understand you had some concerns during your last visit. Clayton's face went pale. Co-owner? I ignored him, leading Rita through the kitchen. We've addressed the immediate issues, but I want to show you something concerning. I opened the cooler, pointing to the digital thermometer I'd installed overnight. See these temperature fluctuations? We've documented the pattern and scheduled emergency repairs. Rita nodded approvingly. Much better than denying the problem existed, like last time. We've also implemented new logging procedures. I handed her a tablet with my digital tracking system, the same one I'd developed for my consulting clients. Real-time monitoring, automated alerts, blockchain verification. Blockchain, Clayton scoffed. This isn't some tech startup. No, Rita said. It's a restaurant that's finally taking food safety seriously. She turned to me. I'll need to complete the full inspection, but I'm already seeing significant improvements. 2 hours later, we gathered in the office to hear the verdict. Jackson paced while Mom clutched her coffee cup. Clayton leaned against the wall, trying to look unconcerned. Based on today's inspection, Rita began, and the documented plans for outstanding repairs, I'm giving you a conditional pass. The tension in the room deflated slightly. However, she continued, I'm requiring weekly temperature logs for the next month, and I want to see those repairs completed within 10 days. That's impossible, Clayton cut in. The cost alone is already covered, I interrupted. I have a contractor starting tomorrow. Rita left, and Clayton rounded on me. You have no authority to make these decisions. Actually, Jackson pulled out a document. She does. The ownership transfer was filed this morning. Clayton's face contorted. You ungrateful. He caught himself straightening his tie. Fine, but as CFO, I'll need to review all expenditures. About that. I nodded to Mohammed, who'd been quietly filming the entire exchange on his phone. We should discuss the missing inventory payments and the falsified temperature logs, and maybe those interesting offshore accounts Marley found. The colour drained from Clayton's face. You're bluffing. Try me. I pulled up the evidence on my tablet. We can do this quietly. You resign, return the money, and we don't press charges. Or we can make it very, Very public. You'd destroy the restaurant's reputation. No, Mum spoke up, her voice firm. You did that when you put our customers at risk. Clayton looked around the room, finding no allies. You'll regret this, he snarled, grabbing his jacket. All of you. After he stormed out, Jackson let out a long breath. That felt good. Don't celebrate yet, I warned. He won't go down without a fight. My phone chimed. A message from Marley. Clayton just called his lawyer. Want me to release what we found to the restaurant review sites? Not yet, I typed back. Let's see what he does first. Mohammed cleared his throat. The staff's waiting. They want to know what's next. I looked at Jackson and Mom. That depends. Are you ready to make real changes? Mom reached for my hand. Lead the way, sweetheart. Walking into the kitchen, facing the nervous staff, I felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about protection, redemption, and building something better from the ashes of what Clayton had nearly destroyed. All right, everyone, I called out, clapping my hands. Let's talk about the future of Long's Kitchen. And this time we're doing it right. 300 cancellations in 2 days. Jackson slammed his laptop shut. Clayton's been busy. I looked up from the prep station where I was teaching 2 line cooks my signature pasta technique. What's he doing? Anonymous reviews claiming food poisoning. Social media posts about health violations. He's trying to tank us before we can expose him. Let me see. I wiped my hands and took Jackson's phone. The comments were clearly coordinated. Same writing style, posted within minutes of each other. Marley can help with this. She's dealt with review bombing before. The kitchen door burst open. Mom rushed in, face flushed. The suppliers, they're refusing our orders. Clayton told them we're about to declare bankruptcy. That's it. I pulled out my phone, dialing Marley. Time to fight back. Already on it, Marley answered. I've got my whole team working on this. But Hayley, there's something else. Clayton's meeting with your biggest competitor right now. My hands clenched. Which one? Antonio's. Looks like he's offering to bring your family recipes to them. Those recipes die with me, Mom snapped, having overheard. They were your grandmother's. I looked around the kitchen, at the worried staff, at Jackson's exhausted face, at the empty dining room beyond. We needed something big. Something that would show everyone the truth. Marley, remember that live streaming event we planned for next month? The Heritage Cooking Series, yeah. We're doing it today. From Long's Kitchen. Get the word out. Jackson grabbed my arm. Hayley, wait. We're not ready. We're never going to be more ready. I turned to the staff. Who's with me? Mohammed stepped forward first. What do you need? Set up 3 stations. Pasta, sauces, and prep. Mum, I want you on camera teaching grandmother's techniques. Jackson, call every loyal customer we have. The kitchen erupted into activity. While the staff transformed the dining room into a production space, I went live on my blog. Today we're doing something special. I'm broadcasting live from Long's Kitchen, my family's restaurant. Some of you know my history here. Others are about to learn it. But this isn't about the past. It's about honesty, integrity, and real food made with love. Within minutes, viewers started pouring in. Marley's team moderated the comments, blocking the fake accounts while highlighting genuine supporters. First, I announced, let me show you what real temperature monitoring looks like. I walked through the kitchen, showing the new systems, the repairs in progress, the staff's dedication to food safety. The viewer count hit 10,000. Mom took over, demonstrating the handmade pasta techniques passed down through generations. These recipes, she said, her voice thick with emotion, aren't just instructions. They're our heritage. Our soul. 20,000 viewers. Jackson, usually uncomfortable with publicity, found his groove explaining the business side. Yes, we've had problems. Yes, we made mistakes, but we're fixing them. Openly and honestly. 30,000. Then the dining room doors flew open. Clayton stormed in, followed by 2 men in suits. This ends now, he shouted. You're violating confidentiality agreements. I kept the camera rolling. Actually, I'm not. The recipes we're demonstrating are mine, developed for my blog. But please tell our 40,000 viewers what confidential information you're worried about. The falsified temperature logs, the missing inventory, the offshore accounts. Clayton lunged for my phone, but Mohammed was faster. He stepped in, blocking Clayton's path. "Don't," Mohammed warned. "Not in my kitchen." "Your kitchen?" Clayton laughed. "I own part of this business." "Not anymore," one of the suits spoke up. I recognized him as our family's lawyer. "The board voted this morning. Your shares are being seized pending investigation." The other suit, a federal investigator, stepped forward. "Mr. Myers, we have some questions about certain financial transactions." The look on Clayton's face was worth every hardship of the past 5 years. As he was led away, the viewer count hit 50,000. "Well," I said to the camera, "that was unexpected. Now, who wants to learn how to make the perfect arrabbiata sauce?" The next 2 hours were a blur of cooking, teaching, and connecting with viewers. Orders started pouring in, not just for dinner, but for cooking classes, private events, catering. As we wrapped up the stream, Jackson pulled me aside. "You know what this means, right? We can't go back to being just a restaurant." I looked around at the energized staff, the equipment set up, the comments still flooding in. "No, we can't. We need to be more." Mum joined us, wiping tears from her eyes. "Your grandmother would be so proud, not just of the cooking, but of how you fought for our family." "We're not done fighting," I said, checking my phone. Marley had sent proof of Clayton's attempted recipe sale to Antonio's. But at least now everyone knows who we really are. "And who are we?" Jackson asked. I smiled, already planning our next move. "We're the family that doesn't just survive betrayal, we cook it into something better." "You want to do what?" Jackson stared at me across the prep table, hands covered in flour from our morning pasta-making session. "Turn the private dining room into a streaming studio," I repeated, sketching the layout on my tablet. "Professional lighting, multiple camera angles, proper sound setup. We can host live cooking classes, special events, chef collaborations, while running a full-service restaurant." He shook his head. "It's too much." "Actually," Mohammed chimed in, "the staff is excited about it, especially after yesterday's stream. Amelia's already got 3 recipes she wants to showcase." As if summoned, Amelia burst through the kitchen doors, her dark curls escaping her chef's cap. "Hayley, you've got to see this." She thrust her phone at me. On the screen was a message from one of the city's most notorious food critics. "Intrigued by yesterday's authenticity. Booking a table for tonight. Hope the kitchen can deliver more than just good TV." "Marcus never comes to restaurants anymore," Mum said, reading over my shoulder. "He's been retired for years." "He's not just coming." Amelia bounced on her toes. "He's bringing investors." Jackson dropped his rolling pin. "What investors?" "The Riverside Restaurant Group." Amelia's eyes sparkled. "They're looking to partner with family-owned restaurants that have modern vision and traditional values. Their words, not mine." My phone buzzed. Marley again. "Clayton's lawyer reached out. They want to make a deal." Before I could respond, the kitchen door swung open again. A tall woman in an impeccable suit walked in, radiating authority. "Ms. Long," she extended her hand. "I'm Victoria from Riverside. I hope you don't mind me coming early. I wanted to see the real kitchen, not just the dinner service." I wiped my hands on my apron. "Perfect timing. We're just about to test some new recipes. Would you like to join us?" Victoria's professional facade cracked slightly, revealing genuine enthusiasm. "I'd love to." For the next hour, we walked her through our process. Amelia demonstrated her modern take on classic sauces, while Mom shared stories about the restaurant's history. I showed Victoria our plans for the streaming studio, explaining how we could bridge traditional restaurant service with digital content. "Impressive," Victoria said, sampling Amelia's roasted pepper sauce. "But what about Clayton? Our research shows he's making serious allegations." "Check your email." Marley's voice came from my phone's speaker. "I just sent you everything we have on Clayton's activities. Bank records, falsified documents, attempted recipe theft, all verified by 3 independent forensic accountants." Victoria pulled out her phone, scrolling through the documents. Her eyebrows rose steadily. "Well?" she said finally. This changes things. We were considering a standard investment package, but now... She looked around the kitchen with new interest. How would you feel about being the flagship location for a new concept? Traditional restaurants with integrated digital platforms, teaching kitchens, content creation spaces. Jackson stepped forward. What's the catch? No catch. You maintain creative control and majority ownership. We provide capital, infrastructure, and protection from people like Clayton. Speaking of Clayton, Marley cut in. His lawyer's getting impatient. They're threatening to go public with their side of the story. Let them, I said. We have nothing to hide. Victoria smiled. That's exactly why we're interested. Authenticity is rare in this industry. Suddenly, Mom gasped. She was staring at her phone, face pale. Clayton's at Antonio's right now with your father. The kitchen went silent. Dad hadn't been seen in public since his stroke. What was Clayton playing at? He's using Dad to legitimize whatever lies he's telling, Jackson growled. No, I said, an idea forming. He's given us exactly what we need. I turned to Victoria. How fast can you get your legal team here? They're on standby. Good. Mom, call the care facility. Find out who authorized Dad's release. Jackson, get the car. Marley, alert your contacts at the local news stations. If Clayton wants to make this public, let's make it very public. What are you planning? Victoria asked. I grabbed my chef's coat. A family reunion, with witnesses. As everyone scrambled to action, Amelia caught my arm. What about dinner service? Marcus is still coming. You're running it, I said. Show him what the next generation can do. Her eyes widened. Me? But you're ready. I squeezed her shoulder. The kitchen's yours tonight. Victoria watched this exchange with interest. You know, we've been looking for young talent to feature in our development program. One crisis at a time, I laughed, heading for the door. But keep that thought. Outside, Jackson had the car running. Mom was already in the back seat clutching her phone. The care facility says Clayton claimed to have power of attorney. He doesn't, Jackson said. I do. Then let's go get Dad, I said, sliding into the passenger seat, and show Clayton what real family loyalty looks like. As we pulled away, I caught a glimpse of the restaurant's sign in the rearview mirror. Long's Kitchen, a name that had meant so many different things to me over the years. Now it was about to mean something new, something better. Antonio's parking lot was packed when we arrived. Through the windows I could see news vans gathering. Marley worked fast. Ready? Jackson killed the engine. Wait! Mum's voice shook. I need to tell you something. About why your father really chose Jackson to run the business. Mum, we don't have time. It wasn't about gender, she cut me off. Clayton threatened to expose your father's gambling debts if he didn't push you out. The world tilted sideways. What? Your father lost everything in a poker game with Clayton's friends. Clayton offered to help, but his condition was that you couldn't take over. He said you were too smart, would figure out his scheme. Jackson slammed his hand against the steering wheel. Why didn't you tell us? Your father was ashamed, and then the stroke. Mom wiped her eyes. I should have told you sooner. Should have stopped it. A tap on the window interrupted us. Victoria stood outside with two suited lawyers. Clayton's getting nervous. He's trying to rush your father into signing something. That got us moving. Inside Antonio's, we found them in a private dining room. Clayton, his lawyer, and Dad in his wheelchair. My heart clenched at how frail he looked. What a touching family reunion, Clayton sneered, but I saw fear in his eyes. Dad's face lit up when he saw us. His speech was slurred from the stroke, but clear enough. Haley. Hi, Dad. I knelt beside his wheelchair. Having dinner without us? This is a private meeting, Clayton's lawyer interjected. Actually, Victoria stepped forward, it's now a matter of criminal investigation. Elder abuse, fraud, coercion. Ridiculous, Clayton scoffed. Mr. Long is here voluntarily. Without his legal guardian's consent, Jackson interrupted. That's kidnapping. News cameras appeared in the doorway. Clayton's face went from red to white. Shall we discuss those gambling debts now? I asked sweetly. The ones you used to blackmail my father. Clayton lunged for the papers in front of Dad, but Victoria's lawyers were faster. One of them scanned the documents quickly. Transfer of all remaining shares, he announced. Signed under duress, I'm sure the court will find. Dad reached for my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. Tried. Protect you, he mumbled. I know, Dad. I squeezed back, but I didn't need protection. I needed trust. Police are here, Marley texted. Coming in now. Clayton made a break for the kitchen door. He didn't get far. Mohammed and 2 line cooks blocked his path. Not in my kitchen, Mohammed said again, arms crossed. The next few minutes were chaos. Police reading rights, reporters shouting questions, Clayton being led away in handcuffs, still yelling threats. Through it all, Dad held my hand. Proud, he managed. Your videos. Watch. Every day. Mum started crying. Jackson put his arm around her. Mr. Long, Victoria said gently, would you like to go home? To your restaurant? He nodded emphatically. Good, she smiled. Because we have some contracts to discuss. About the future of Long's Kitchen. Back at the restaurant, we found the dining room buzzing. Marcus, the food critic, was holding court at the best table, practically glowing with satisfaction. Amelia rushed up, beaming. He loved everything. Said it was the perfect blend of tradition and innovation. And wait until you taste what I created for dessert. You're looking at our new head chef, I announced. What? Amelia gasped. I'll be focusing on the digital side, working with Victoria's team. The kitchen needs someone with your talent and vision. Speaking of vision, Victoria pulled out a thick contract. Shall we make this official? We gathered around our favourite corner table, the same one where I'd done my homework as a kid. Dad insisted on sitting up straight, his eyes clear and focused as Victoria explained the terms. Full creative control stays with the family, she confirmed. We provide expansion capital, digital infrastructure, and legal support. In return, we want first rights on franchising the hybrid restaurant studio concept. And Clayton? Jackson asked. Won't be a problem, Marley chimed in from my phone. The evidence is overwhelming. He'll be lucky to avoid prison. Dad picked up the pen, his hand shaking slightly. We all watched as he slowly, carefully signed his name. Your turn, he said, pushing the contract toward me. I looked around the table, at Mom's tearful smile, Jackson's proud nod, Amelia's excited bouncing, Victoria's professional satisfaction, at Dad, finally seeing me clearly. Actually, I said, I want to add one condition. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Oh? A scholarship program for aspiring chefs who've been told they don't belong in professional kitchens. Full training, mentorship, job placement. Done, Victoria said immediately. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. I signed the contract, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a business deal. It was a new chapter for all of us. Now, I stood up, who's hungry? I hear our new head chef makes an amazing dessert. 3, 2, 1, we're live. The red light on the main camera blinked on, and I smiled into the lens. Behind me, the newly renovated teaching kitchen gleamed. Welcome to the first official broadcast from Long's Kitchen's Culinary Academy. I'm Hayley, and today is special. Not just because we're launching our scholarship program, but because we're finally sharing the full story of what happened here 3 months ago. The studio audience, filled with food bloggers, critics, and aspiring chefs, leaned forward. In the front row, Dad sat in his wheelchair, stronger now after weeks of therapy. Mum and Jackson flanked him, both trying not to cry. But first, I continued, let me introduce our head chef, Amelia, who's going to demonstrate the dish that saved our restaurant. Amelia stepped into frame, confidence radiating from every movement. Thanks, Hayley. This is my modern take on a classic family recipe, with a twist that even Marcus couldn't guess. As she began cooking, I checked my phone. The viewer count was already past 100,000. Marley's message popped up. Clayton's sentencing is tomorrow. His lawyer's making one last attempt to negotiate. No deals, I typed back. The studio door opened quietly, and Victoria slipped in with a group of investors. Their expressions shifted from skeptical to intrigued as they watched Amelia work her magic. Now, Amelia was saying, the secret is in the timing. You want the sauce to reduce just enough to... A commotion erupted outside. Mohammed burst in, face flushed. Clayton's here, with reporters. Perfect timing, I smiled, turning back to the camera. Let's show everyone what real transparency looks like. Mohammed, bring them in. Clayton stormed in, followed by a pack of journalists. He looked awful, expensive suit replaced by rumpled business casual, hair unkempt. You're ruining everything, he shouted. This isn't what fine dining is about? No? I gestured to the cameras. Let's ask our viewers. What matters more, pretense or passion? Secrets or honesty? The comment feed exploded. Viewers shared their own stories of exclusion from the culinary world, of being told they didn't belong. You think this digital circus is success? Clayton sneered. You're turning a respected establishment into a social media joke. Really? Victoria stepped forward. The waiting list for classes is 6 months long. The restaurant is booked through next quarter. And the franchise inquiries, she smiled. Well, let's just say your old business model is officially obsolete. Tell them about the gambling, Dad called out suddenly, his voice stronger than it had been in months. Tell them how you trapped me. The reporter's cameras swiveled to Clayton, who took a step back. Or, I said quietly, tell them about the health code violations, the stolen money, the lives you put at risk. You have no proof. Actually, Marley's voice came through the speakers, we have everything, including your offshore account records, which the FBI is very interested in. Clayton lunged for the nearest camera. 2 security guards appeared instantly, restraining him as he shouted incoherently about lawsuits and revenge. Cut that feed, I told the production team, then turned to the main camera. Sorry for the interruption, folks. Now, who wants to learn how to make Amelia's award-winning sauce? As Clayton was led away, the studio erupted in applause. Amelia resumed her demonstration, hands steady despite the drama. You planned this, Jackson whispered, joining me at the prep station. Not exactly, I admitted, but I knew he'd try something. People like Clayton can't stand being irrelevant. Victoria approached with her investors, all of them nodding appreciatively as they sampled Amelia's dish. This is what we're looking for, one said. Authenticity, skill, and a story worth telling. How soon can we start expanding? First, I pointed to the group of aspiring chefs waiting nervously by the door. We train the next generation. Give them what I didn't have, a fair chance. Speaking of chances, Mom called out, your father has something to say. Dad wheeled himself to the front. The room fell silent. I was wrong, he said clearly, each word carefully formed. About everything, but mostly about you, Hayley. You didn't just save our restaurant. You made it better. Tears pricked my eyes, but I had a show to run. Thanks, Dad. Now who's ready to learn some family secrets? The next hour flew by. Amelia taught her techniques. The scholarship recipients shared their stories. Even Jackson got into it, explaining how traditional restaurant management could adapt to the digital age. As we wrapped up, Victoria pulled me aside. The investors want to fast-track the expansion. They're talking about a whole network of hybrid restaurant schools. Good, I smiled, watching Dad show a young chef the proper way to test pasta texture. Because I have some ideas about that. My phone buzzed one last time. Marley again. Clayton took a plea deal. Full confession. It's really over. I looked around the studio, at my family, whole and healing, at Amelia, teaching with passionate confidence, at the next generation of chefs, eyes bright with possibility. No, I typed back, it's just beginning. And that's how you break into the culinary world, I said to the camera, setting down my knife. Not by waiting for permission, but by creating your own path. The studio lights dimmed, and our newest class of scholarship students burst into applause. Among them sat Clayton's daughter, Rachel, who'd reached out to me after his sentencing. She had her father's determination, but her own fierce integrity. Before we end today's session, I continued, I want to introduce someone special. Amelia? Amelia stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. As most of you know, I started in this kitchen as a line cook. Today, I'm announcing the opening of my own restaurant, with Long's Kitchen as a partner. The students cheered. Rachel jumped up, hugging her mentor. Over the past months, Amelia had taken the girl under her wing, helping her heal from her father's betrayal through cooking. But that's not all, I added. Show them, Dad. Dad wheeled himself to the front, his movements stronger each day. He held up a leather-bound book, my grandmother's original recipe journal. This belongs to all of us now, he announced. No more secrets, no more exclusion. Every recipe, every technique, it's going into the Academy's curriculum. Mom gasped. Even Jackson looked surprised. That journal had been our family's most guarded treasure. Are you sure? Amelia asked softly. Look at the first page, Dad said. Amelia opened the book. There, in my grandmother's handwriting, was an inscription none of us had noticed before. Food made with love must be shared or it loses its soul. She knew, I realized. She always knew this day would come. The studio door opened and Victoria entered with Mohammed. They were grinning. Tell them! Mohammed burst out. Victoria laughed. The first satellite academy opens next month in New Orleans. Mohammed's running it. With a few modifications, Mohammed added. We're adding a whole section on fusion cuisine, breaking down cultural barriers through food. Speaking of breaking barriers, Marley's voice came through the speakers. You might want to check the latest industry rankings. I pulled up the list on the main screen. There it was. Long's Kitchen Academy, rated the most influential culinary institution of the year. Not for our food alone, but for our mission to transform the industry. This calls for a celebration, Jackson declared. Kitchen's closed to the public tonight. Family dinner? Family and friends, I corrected, looking at our students. Everyone's invited. Hours later, the kitchen buzzed with activity. Students and instructors cooked side by side. Rachel worked confidently at the pasta station, demonstrating her grandmother's techniques to younger students. The very traditions Clayton had tried to hoard were now freely shared. Try this, Amelia called out, offering a spoon of sauce. Something new I'm working on. The flavors exploded on my tongue. Familiar but revolutionary, just like everything else we'd built. Perfect for the opening menu, I said. About that. She fidgeted with her apron. I want to call the restaurant Second Chances. My throat tightened. Amelia. Because that's what you gave me, what we're giving all of them. She gestured around the kitchen. Even Rachel. Dad wheeled over, sampling the sauce. Your grandmother would have loved this, he told me. The food, yes, but mostly the joy, the sharing. Remember what you used to say? Mom joined us, carrying a tray of fresh bread. About revenge being a dish best served cold? I looked around my kingdom. Not the one I'd originally wanted, but the one I'd built instead. At Rachel, finding her own path. At Amelia, ready to soar. At Mohammed, preparing to spread our message to new cities. At my family, whole and healing, and better than before. Cold revenge is overrated, I said. I prefer it hot, fresh, and shared with family. Speaking of sharing, Victoria approached with a tablet. The applications for next semester just hit 1,000. Seems Clayton's convictions sparked something. People are speaking up about similar experiences all over the industry. Good, I said. Change happens one kitchen at a time. The evening wound down with all of us around the big prep table, sharing food and stories. Rachel taught Dad her grandmother's secret tiramisu recipe. Amelia and Mohammed debated fusion techniques. Students swapped tips and dreams and phone numbers. Hey, Jackson nudged me. Remember when you just wanted to run one restaurant? I watched a young student perfectly execute my signature pasta flip, her face glowing with achievement. This is better, much better, Dad agreed, reaching for my hand. Thank you, sweetheart, for not giving up on us. That's the thing about family recipes, I said, squeezing his hand. They're not just about ingredients. They're about forgiveness, growth, love. And sharing, Mom added, passing around dessert plates. And sharing, I agreed, looking at my transformed kingdom. Always sharing.
The first time I laid eyes on Henry was at a college seminar. We were both there to earn extra credits, even though our academic paths differed significantly. He was a business major, while I was immersed in literature. The moment he raised his hand to pose a challenging question to the professor, I felt an immediate attraction. After class, we found ourselves at the same coffee shop, and it felt as though the universe conspired to bring us together. Our conversations spanned a wide range of topics, from college hobbies to childhood memories. Henry casually mentioned his strict background as he took a sip from his cup. My parents are deeply religious. I responded with a nonchalant shrug. So, my parents are free thinkers. They've always encouraged me to question everything. Henry chuckled. Sounds like we're from different planets. Despite these apparent differences, an undeniable chemistry blossomed between us. We began to spend more time together, frequently studying in each other's company and exploring the city during weekends. About a year into our relationship, we made the practical decision to move in together. It made sense given that our apartments were far from the university and we had become inseparable by then. However, when Henry broke the news to his parents, it wasn't well received. During a dinner at their house, Mrs. William, Henry's mother, was the first to voice her concerns. Living together before marriage, Henry? You know how we feel about that, she remarked, her disapproval evident. Henry, shifting uncomfortably in his seat, replied, Mum, times have changed. It's not as big of a deal these days. Mr. William joined in, adding, Well, in our house it still is. You're living in sin. Feeling the weight of their disapproving glances, I tried to alleviate the tension. We respect your beliefs, but this is our decision. We're adults. Mrs. Williams sighed. It's just not the way we raised you. Henry reached for my hand and said, Lizzie and I love each other. We want to start our life together, and I hope you can support that. The evening concluded on a somber note, but Henry and I remained resolute in our decision. We found a cozy apartment near the campus and moved in a few days later, determined to build our future together. As weeks turned into months, our bond grew stronger. However, the strain with Henry's parents always lingered in the background, like an old radio playing a sad tune. One evening, as we were settling into our new life, there was a knock on the door. It was Mrs. William, holding a pie. I thought I'd come by and see how you two are doing, she said, looking around with a critical eye. We're doing great, Mrs. William, I replied, trying to be cordial. She sat down, placing the pie on the table. This is all temporary, right? You'll get married soon. Henry cleared his throat. We haven't decided that yet, Mum. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the constant pressure from Henry's parents started to weigh on us. Our once carefree dates and movie nights began to have a shadow, the looming expectation of marriage. One evening, while we were making dinner together in our tiny kitchen, Henry broached the subject. Ella, have you ever thought about, having a wedding? I looked up from chopping the vegetables, surprised. Like for us? Are you proposing? He smiled awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. Not exactly. I mean, yes, I want to marry you someday, but right now it's more about my parents. Maybe if we had a ceremony, they'd back off. I sighed. So, you're saying a wedding without the legal paperwork? He nodded. Just a thought. We can invite friends, make it a fun day. My parents get their wedding and we get some peace. It wasn't the romantic proposal I'd imagined, but I understood his reasoning. All right, I said slowly, but on one condition. We do it our way. No big church wedding, just something small and intimate. Henry grinned, relief evident on his face. Deal. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. We chose a beautiful outdoor venue, invited our close friends and family, and planned a simple but heartfelt ceremony. When we broke the news to his parents, their reaction was surprisingly subdued. An outdoor wedding? Mrs. William asked, raising an eyebrow. Well, it's a start. It's unconventional, but if it means you two are taking the next step, I suppose we can support it, Mr. William added. As long as you're committed to each other, that's what matters. The day of the wedding was sunny and bright. I wore a simple white dress, and Henry looked dashing in his suit. Our friends cheered, and even Henry's parents seemed genuinely happy. During the reception, Mrs. William pulled me aside. Ella, I want to apologise, she began, her voice soft. I know we've been hard on you two, but seeing you together today, I realised that love is what truly matters. I smiled, touched by her words. Thank you, Mrs. William. That means a lot. The day ended on a high note, with everyone dancing and celebrating our love. It felt like we had finally won Henry's parents over, and I hoped this would be a fresh start for us. But as days passed, their daily visits began. They'd drop by unannounced, often with unsolicited advice or thinly veiled criticisms. It was as if the wedding had given them a free pass to interfere in our lives. One evening, as Henry and I were unwinding after a long day, there was a knock at the door. Opening it, I found Mrs. William holding a casserole dish. Just thought I'd drop off some dinner, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Thanks, I replied, taking the dish. But you know you don't have to do this. She waved a hand dismissively. It's no trouble. I just thought since you're always so busy you might not have time to cook. I forced a smile, sensing the underlying judgment. We manage, but thanks anyway. As the door closed, I sighed deeply. Henry wrapped an arm around me and whispered, It'll be okay. It started with the subtle comments, the not-so-innocent questions. Why's the house so messy? Have you considered cooking something more nutritious? Mrs. William would ask, her tone dripping with faux concern. One day, I came home from work exhausted to find her in our living room, reorganising our bookshelves. Mrs. William, what are you doing? I asked, taken aback. She looked up as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Just thought I'd help tidy up a bit. These shelves looked so cluttered, she replied. Henry entered from the kitchen, holding 2 cups of tea. Mum's just helping out, Ella, he said, trying to play mediator. I took a deep breath, my patience waning. This is our home, Henry. We didn't ask for help. Mrs. William pursed her lips, her eyes watering. I'm just trying to be helpful. After all, now we're family. Days like these became more frequent. They'd pop by without notice, giving advice we never asked for, criticising decisions we'd made together as a couple. It was clear they no longer saw boundaries. One evening, after a particularly trying visit from his parents, Henry and I sat down for a heart-to-heart. Henry, this has to stop, I began, my voice trembling with frustration. I can't live like this, feeling like I'm constantly being judged in my own home. He ran his fingers through his hair, looking equally stressed. I know, Ella. It's just they're my parents. I don't know how to tell them to back off without hurting their feelings. I replied, but what about our feelings, our peace of mind? We can't keep sacrificing that for them. A week later, we invited them over for dinner, deciding to address the issue head-on. The evening started off pleasantly enough. We chatted about work, friends, and the latest news. But as the main course was served, I took a deep breath and dove in. Mrs. William, Mr. William, we invited you over because there's something we need to discuss, I began, trying to keep my voice steady. Mr. William looked up, his fork pausing mid-air. What's the matter? I exchanged a glance with Henry, who nodded in encouragement. It's about the frequent visits and, well, the constant input on our lives. Mrs. William looked taken aback. We're just trying to help, Henry took over. Mum, Dad, we appreciate that you care, but it's becoming overwhelming. We need some space to live our lives, make our mistakes, and grow together. Tears formed in Mrs. William's eyes. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us, Mr. William added, his voice stern. We're just looking out for you. It seems Ella here doesn't appreciate family. I felt a pang of guilt, but stood my ground. It's not about appreciation, it's about respect. respecting our boundaries and our choices. The room grew silent, the tension palpable. Mrs. William dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, her shoulders shaking. "We just wanted to be part of your lives. I never thought it had come to this." Henry looked torn, his loyalty divided, but he held firm. "Mum, we love you, but this is our life. We need you to understand." The evening ended with Mrs. William in tears, Mr. William looking disappointed, and an unspoken agreement that things had to change. As they left, I felt a mix of relief and dread, wondering what the future held for our relationships. Days after the confrontation, the house felt unusually quiet. The constant visits had stopped, but the silence was both a relief and a curse. Every time the doorbell rang or there was a knock, my heart would race, expecting it to be Henry's parents, but it never was. One evening, as Henry and I sat on our couch, he broached the topic. "Ella, do you think we were too harsh? I mean, they're my parents. Maybe we overreacted." I took his hand, feeling its warmth. "Henry, it's not about being harsh. It's about setting boundaries. We did what we had to do." He sighed deeply. "I know. It's just hard. I never imagined being in this situation with them." As days turned into weeks, we began to feel the weight of our decision. There were no more surprise visits, but there were also no calls or messages. It was as if we had cut ties completely. During this period, I often found solace in browsing property listings online. One day, as I was scrolling through listings of a beautiful house in a neighbouring town, it caught my eye. This house had a large garden, a spacious living area, and, most importantly, it was far away from our current life. "Henry, come look at this," I called out. He joined me, peering at the screen. "Wow, it's beautiful, but why are you looking at houses?" I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "I was thinking maybe it's time for a fresh start somewhere new, where we can create our own memories away from all this drama." He looked surprised. "You mean move? Leave everything behind?" I nodded. "It's drastic, I know, but maybe it's what we need." We discussed it at length, weighing the pros and cons. The idea of starting anew was enticing but also terrifying. Yet, the more we talked, the more it felt right. A few weeks later, we visited the house in person. It was even more beautiful in reality, and the neighbourhood seemed perfect. After much consideration, I decided to use the money I had inherited from my grandmother to buy it. The day we signed the papers, I felt a mix of emotions. Excitement for the new beginning, but also sadness for what we were leaving behind. The move went smoothly, and soon we were settling into our new home. It felt like a dream. The peace and quiet were just what we needed. One evening, as we were enjoying a quiet dinner in our new dining room, Henry said, "Ella, I think this was the best decision we ever made." I smiled, feeling content. I think so too. The first few months in our new home were like a dream. The mornings were quiet, filled with the chirping of birds, and the evenings brought a calm, tranquil energy. Henry and I fell into a comfortable routine, enjoying the privacy and peace that our new surroundings provided. The past seemed like a distant memory, and the attention that once surrounded our lives had all but disappeared, until one fateful day. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. Henry went to answer it. I heard murmurs, and then a familiar voice that made my heart sink. "Mrs. William." I walked to the entrance, my face revealing my shock. There they were, Mrs. and Mr. William, suitcases in tow, standing at our doorstep. "Mom, Dad, what are you doing here?" Henry asked, his voice filled with surprise. Mrs. William smiled a bit too sweetly. "We missed you, dear, and we thought, why not pay a visit?" I tried to keep my composure. "It's unexpected," Mr. William chimed in. "We just wanted to see where our son is living now. Is that so wrong?" Henry seemed torn. "Of course not, but a heads up would have been nice." Mrs. William looked around, her eyes scanning our home. "Oh, what a lovely place you have here. Much nicer than the old one." I bristled but said nothing. What was supposed to be a visit turned into a stay. One night became 2, then 3, and they began to settle in, making themselves comfortable much like they had in our previous home. One evening after dinner, I pulled Henry aside. "Henry, we can't go down this road again. We moved to escape this." He sighed. "I know, Ella, but they're my parents. I can't just throw them out." I looked at him with frustration. "Then what? Let them take over our lives again?" Mrs. William, who seemed to have overheard our conversation, walked over, her eyes welling up with tears. "Is that how you feel, Henry, that we're a burden?" Henry looked helplessly at me, then back at his mother. "Mum, it's not like that. We just wish you had told us you were coming." She sniffled. "We just wanted to be close to our son, but it seems we're not welcome here either." I had a sinking feeling when I heard Henry's parents mention they'd made a decision about their living situation. The two of us had recently been discussing the matter privately, hoping to find a delicate way to address the issue. Now it seemed the matter was going to be thrust into the open. Mr. William began, "We have some news." Henry shifted in his seat, already sensing what was coming. "Go on," he prompted. Mrs. William, trying to sound cheerful, said, "We've sold our house. We realise there's no need for it when we have such a lovely family home here with you two." My eyes widened in shock. "You did what?" "We wanted to be closer to you both," Mr. William explained, looking earnest. Mrs. William looked hurt. "We are family. Why wouldn't you want us here?" I took a deep breath and said what I'd wanted to say for a long time. "This house, it's mine. It's not owned jointly by Henry and me. It's in my name only." I retrieved a file from the study, showing them the ownership documents. Mrs. William looked at the papers and then back at me, clearly stunned. "But you're married. What's yours is Henry's and vice versa." I smiled triumphantly. "That's where you're mistaken. We held a wedding ceremony, yes, but Henry and I never legally married. We never signed any official documents, so technically you're not my in-laws." The weight of my words seemed to hang in the air. Mrs. William's face turned a shade paler, her eyes widening in disbelief. Mr. William looked from me to Henry, seeking some form of denial. Henry took my hand, signalling his support. "It's true, Mum and Dad. We thought you'd be more accepting if we had a ceremony, but we never felt the need to get the state involved in our relationship." Mrs. William began to sob. "So you deceived us, and now you're throwing us out." The room was heavy with tension after the bombshells were dropped. Henry's parents were clearly taken aback, but it wasn't long before the shock turned into outrage. "So you tricked everyone with a sham wedding, and you think that makes everything all right?" Mrs. Williams' voice had a hint of venom. Henry sighed. "It wasn't about tricking anyone. It was about the way we wanted to live our lives. The ceremony was for us and those who wanted to celebrate our love." Mrs. Williams' face turned a shade redder. "You dare defy the sanctity of marriage, live together in sin, and then mock us with a fake wedding. I've had enough," Mr. William declared, standing up. "Suddenly you, young lady, are nothing but a sinner and a witch, trying to pull my son away from his family and his values." I was taken aback by the fierceness of their reaction, but I wouldn't let them intimidate me. "I have not taken Henry from anyone. He's made his own choices, and it's high time you respect them." Mrs. Williams' eyes were filled with tears, but her voice was stern. "Henry, come home with us. Leave this woman. She's done nothing but pull you into her web of deceit." Henry, ever the calm in the storm, replied, "Mum, Dad, I love you both, but my place is here with her. She's been nothing but kind and understanding, even when you both haven't been. You can't just demand I leave her." "You're choosing her over us." Mr. Williams' voice was a mix of anger and disbelief. "I'm choosing to live my life on my terms," Henry asserted. The room went silent for what felt like an eternity. The air was thick, every breath heavy. Mrs. Williams' face was a mask of hurt and betrayal. "Very well," she said, her voice cold. "But remember this. You're turning your back on your family, on your faith. All for her. I'm not turning my back on anyone, Henry said. I just wish you'd see that. Mrs. Williams' eyes were hard, her voice bitter. Let him go, she said to her husband, not giving either of us another glance. And with that, they left, leaving behind a wake of hurt, confusion, and uncertainty. I looked at Henry, his face a mirror of my own feelings. We both knew that things had changed irrevocably, and there was no going back. A few days after the confrontation, as I was heading back from work, my neighbour, Mrs. Carlson, called out to me. She was an older lady known for her daily walks and her uncanny ability to know everyone's business. Did you hear about the William family not selling their house? She asked with a knowing look. I paused, taken aback. What do you mean? She leaned closer, lowering her voice. They never put their house on the market. I heard from Isabella, who heard from Janice, an employee at the town's real estate office, that there's no record of the William property being up for sale. A knot formed in my stomach. Were they lying to us all this time? When I got home, I shared the information with Henry, and he looked shocked. I can't believe they'd lie to us. What were they trying to achieve? We both knew the answer. They wanted to manipulate the situation to their advantage. The realization was a hard pill to swallow. All this time, while we tried to understand and accommodate them, they had been playing a game. Henry sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. This changes things. It's one thing to have disagreements, but outright deception, that's something else entirely. We can't keep letting them pull us into their manipulative games, I said firmly. We need strong boundaries, Henry nodded. You're right. We can't continue like this. It's unhealthy for us and for our relationship. The next day, he went over to his parents' house. He needed to confront them and get some answers. When he returned, his face was a mix of anger and sadness. They admitted it, he began, his voice heavy. They thought that if they moved in with us, we'd be a proper family again. They felt threatened by our independence. We sat down, discussing our next steps. It was clear that for our own sanity and the health of our relationship, we needed distance from them. We need a break, Henry declared. Some time away from all this drama and manipulation. I agreed. It's the best decision for us right now. That evening, we sent a message to his parents, informing them of our decision. The reply was filled with anger and accusations, but we remained firm. We needed this for ourselves and for our future. The next few weeks were quiet, and we focused on each other, rebuilding the trust and closeness that had been strained over the past months. One evening, as we sat on our porch, looking at the stars, Henry turned to me and whispered, "Thank you for standing by me, for fighting for us." I smiled, squeezing his hand. Always. The journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but it was a poignant reminder of the importance of boundaries, honesty, and mutual respect in any relationship. As the night deepened, we looked toward the future, hoping for peace and understanding. I don't want a woman with a belly like a monster. You'll have to raise the kid by yourself while looking at my swollen belly, 9 months pregnant. His eyes oozed contempt, and a vulgar smile stretched across his lips. I'd always anticipated this day would come, and despite foreseeing such an incident, I promptly went to my room. I returned with a document in hand. "Fine, here are the divorce papers." I thrust the prepared divorce documents before Anton. He contorted his face and exclaimed, "What the hell, what's this all of a sudden?" "Well, it was your idea, now sign it quickly. I'll submit it tomorrow," I challenged him. His face rapidly turned red as my provocative words stung him. "Watch closely, I'll make you regret how you've treated and looked down on me all this time," I declared. "My name is Helen. I'm a 26-year-old housewife. Until 2 years ago, I was working for a mobile company. I met Anton Cade, my boss at the workplace, when I was 24. It didn't take us long to fall in love and get married. Anton, 3 years my senior, was very dependable, especially when teaching me the ropes at work. As a newcomer to the department who didn't know her way around, I couldn't express how grateful I was for Anton's precise instructions as he taught me about work. We became friends and frequently went out to dinner together. When he asked me out, I was over the moon, particularly because I had never dated anyone before. It's embarrassing and not something I share often, but being a cartoon enthusiast, I was always more interested in 2D characters than real-world men. However, seeing my high school and college classmates getting married one after another, I started to feel the pressure. When I fell in love with Anton, I secretly vowed it would be my first and last love. So, when I began dating Anton, and we got married a year later, I was completely elated. Anton was good-looking and popular among our female co-workers. I was proud to be his wife, and many congratulated us, saying, "Congratulations," or, "Though I'm jealous." "I wish you happiness," I said, basking in unprecedented joy. I couldn't have imagined what lay ahead for us. "You're married to me now, so you'll quit your job, right?" I informed them. Yesterday, the day after we submitted our marriage registration, just as we were eagerly starting our new married life, Anton said, "Obviously, I've always wanted my wife to focus solely on household matters. Don't worry, I can support both of us with my income." "But this is so sudden. You never mentioned this before," I replied. I had never heard from Anton about quitting my job before our marriage. I started my current job due to a recommendation from my father. It wouldn't be right to leave without notice. I wanted to explain this, but Anton's eyes exerted a silent pressure, warning me not to pursue the topic. I instinctively closed my mouth, and I couldn't resist any longer. "I admit I should have told you, but it's done. Starting tomorrow, you don't need to go to work. I'll handle the handover starting tomorrow," Anton declared. What a surprise! The news about starting tomorrow was so sudden that it left me feeling dizzy. However, Anton's words were resolute. I couldn't oppose Anton, who had been my superior at work. Even though I had to leave my job without a proper farewell, I was determined to make our marriage work. Since Anton had married me and entrusted me with household responsibilities, I wanted to meet his expectations. I didn't want to be considered an incompetent wife. With utmost dedication, I worked hard at the household chores. I prepared meals, focusing on Anton's favourites, setting as many dishes as possible on the table. Although Anton ate everything without specifically mentioning whether it was delicious or not, I honestly wished he would offer a word of appreciation. I longed for that kind of recognition, especially after quitting my job and no longer being recognised by anyone. "I have an important meeting tomorrow. Is my jacket clean?" I asked Anton. "Yes, of course," Anton replied. He seemed to hold some old-fashioned views, showing a domineering side. I kept reminding myself how fortunate I was to have married him and took the initiative to meet his expectations. With no personal income, I had no other way of living normally other than with Anton. Although our relationship often felt more like that of an employer and a housemaid rather than a husband and wife, our marital life was generally smooth. However, one day, I fell ill and couldn't get out of bed. Feeling lethargic, I thought, "I'll catch up on the housework tomorrow." Anton entered the bedroom and angrily asked, "What are you doing? Get up and make some food." He kicked the blanket I was under. "I'm sorry, I'm feeling unwell today. Can you manage something for yourself?" I explained, hoping for understanding. Instead of nodding or consoling me, Anton frowned and said, "You don't work, yet you're lying down just because you feel a bit sick. Pathetic. Get up." He kicked me again, and I got up from the bed in disbelief. It was unthinkable that he would demand housework from his sick wife. I'd never imagined he would be like this before we married. Perhaps it was my fault for not seeing it, but it was too much. I did my chores while crying. Several days passed, and my health did not improve. Then, I realised I had missed my period and rushed to the drugstore to buy a pregnancy test. Upon trying it, the result was positive. I was overjoyed, and tears flowed naturally. I decided to tell Anton when he returned from work, and my spirits lifted instantly. The day Anton returned home after midnight, was the day I had decided to share the news. However, the moment he entered, the smell of alcohol made me nauseous. His face was flushed, and he staggered as he walked. It was surprising how much he had drunk, especially without notifying me in advance, so I had prepared dinner. I wanted to share the news of my pregnancy with Anton. But even more than that, I wanted to do it quickly. My excited emotions surged, and I shared the news with my intoxicated husband. "Yes, I haven't been to the doctor yet, so it's not confirmed," I began, eager to convey our happiness. However, I saw Anton's face darken as he responded. "A child? What have you done?" Anton's characteristically grim tone was unlike anything I'd ever heard before. I don't want a child. Damn, this is the worst. If you're going to have it, raise it yourself." His harsh words shocked me, and he rudely stripped off his clothes and headed to the bathroom. It was unbelievable. I couldn't fathom why he would make such irresponsible comments about our baby, instead of being happy for us. The happiness I had felt just moments ago was immediately replaced with deep sorrow. Why would he say such things? He had never mentioned not wanting children before. We hadn't even been using contraception, so I naturally thought we both wanted children. To tell his pregnant wife that having a child is the worst was beyond comprehension. As I was hanging Anton's jacket and about to take his shirt to the washroom, I noticed something else. "What's this?" A piece of paper had emerged from the pocket of the dress shirt, and immediately I could tell it was a receipt due to its texture. At first, I thought it was just a receipt from tonight's gathering, and I was about to discard it. But then, my eyes caught the name of the establishment. "Is this a motel?" My hand holding the receipt trembled, and I could tell from the name that it was indeed a motel. The shock of this discovery weighed heavily on my heart. Why doesn't Anton love me? Isn't marriage supposed to be between two people who love each other? Especially since we've only been married for just over a year, how could this be? I had been lost in imaginary romances for years, never truly engaging in a real relationship. I couldn't immediately accept this harsh reality. However, the idea of Anton cheating started to make sense, and many pieces fell into place. Had Anton been using me from the very beginning of our marriage? Was he genuinely in love with the person he was cheating with, while I was merely a convenient servant? All these doubts swirled within me. Was that the reason he reacted so harshly when he learned of my pregnancy? As I grappled with these thoughts, nausea set in, and I became convinced that something was amiss. Yes, there's no doubt now. Perhaps the reason he drove me out of the company was that his mistress worked there. It seemed like everything was beginning to make sense, as if he had married me for stability and not love. The line between reality and my imagination became blurry. Still, there was no denying the heartless words he had thrown at me after learning about my pregnancy. That day, I decided to gather evidence of Anton's infidelity. From then on, his cold behavior towards me was undeniable. It was as if he couldn't forgive me for becoming pregnant. Despite knowing that I was suffering from morning sickness, he would deliberately eat smelly foods near me and nitpick my housework, forcing me to redo tasks. My pregnant body had to endure a lot, and my heart was heavy. Despite this, I continued to investigate his affair. Anton never parted from his cell phone, even taking it with him to the bathroom, making it impossible for me to sneak a peek. When I secretly entered Anton's room, it was neat and tidy, with nothing incriminating in sight. He was meticulous at work, and his desk was always in perfect order. I realized that it would be challenging to catch him off guard directly. I frequently checked Anton's pockets for possible evidence, such as receipts. However, my investigation was proving to be difficult. The thought of hiring a detective crossed my mind, but I didn't have the money for such an endeavor. I was deep in thought, mulling over my situation, when I received an unexpected phone call. It was my father. He rarely reached out to me, so I wondered about the reason for his call. "Hello, it's me, your dad. How are you?" he inquired. I was surprised by his call, considering his busy schedule. "Dad, what's going on? Aren't you busy with work?" I asked. "My employees have been doing well, so I'm not that busy," he explained. My father is the CEO of a company in Canada, and he has always been a workaholic. I didn't have many childhood memories of playing with him, but I respected his dedication to his job. So, his unexpected call left me curious about the purpose. I inquired, "So, what's happening?" As I waited for his response, my father proceeded to reveal a shocking truth. "Is that really true?" I asked in disbelief. "Yes, he's not the type to lie. I want you to believe me," my father reassured me. I was initially in shock and unable to respond, but as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, I felt a sense of relief. "Thank you, Dad. I'll do my best," I told him with gratitude before hanging up the phone. My research was finally paying off, and I couldn't help but feel elated. However, the newfound knowledge also stirred up feelings of anger and frustration due to the ongoing tension between Anton and me. Anton continued to be distant, even though I was pregnant. Each time he acted this way, I harbored a deep hatred towards him. Months passed, and our relationship remained strained. Eventually, an event occurred that shattered our life. At 9 months pregnant, I was always cautious around Anton, living in a state of constant apprehension. I tried to avoid crossing paths with him, leading a quiet and stifled life. One day, I served dinner as usual, and when Anton returned home, we sat at the dining table. As I quietly ate, Anton suddenly slammed his fork down. "What is this? It's tasteless," he exclaimed, throwing the food I had prepared onto the floor. I was baffled by his outburst, trying to comprehend the situation. The anger at having the meal I had cooked discarded before me began to well up inside. I'd been contemplating this for some time, but recently, you've been complaining about the taste of the meals I prepare. Anton criticized my cooking, stating it was tasteless. While it was true that since becoming pregnant, I had been using less seasoning to make healthier meals for everyone, this was only a temporary measure until the baby's birth. If he found the food bland, he could have simply added some salt himself. Why did he have to throw the meal on the floor? I was about to voice my complaint when Anton sneered and uttered hurtful words. "Humph, I don't want a woman with a belly like a monster. You'll have to raise the kid by yourself while looking at my swollen belly," he spitefully declared, his eyes filled with malice and a vulgar smile stretching across his lips. I had always anticipated that this day might come, even though I had hoped for a different outcome. Swiftly, I went to my room, retrieved a document, and returned to present it to Anton. "Fine, here are the divorce papers," I said, thrusting the prepared documents in front of him. Anton's face twisted in shock as he stammered, "What the hell? What's this all of a sudden?" "Well, it was your idea. Now sign it quickly, I'll submit it tomorrow," I responded. In reality, I had been contemplating divorce since I began suspecting Anton's infidelity. However, with a child on the way, I was unsure if I could support myself if I took that step. But now, I had a different plan in mind. My resolve seemed to have provoked Anton's, his face reddening with anger. "Just watch. I will make you regret every moment you looked down upon me and controlled me. Do you think you can survive without me? You have a baby to care for, and you'll regret it," I warned, my determination unshaken. "I'll be fine. Don't worry about me," I assured Anton. Perhaps irritated by my determination, he snatched the divorce papers and began to fill in the blanks. "Here you go. If this is what you wanted, it's yours." "Thank you," I responded. Probably Anton didn't think I would actually submit the divorce papers, as he handed them over without a fuss. The following day, I promptly submitted the divorce papers and left the house. I knew he would be surprised when he returned from work to find out. After that, I moved to my parents' home, primarily due to my father's return to the US from Canada and his suggestion that I stay with them. It was the right decision at the time, as I was fed up with my life with Anton, and I was deeply thankful to my father. I received 3 calls from Anton Cade on the day I left our home, but I ignored all of them. Eventually, he stopped calling. It became clear that I meant very little to Anton. He was probably content with his mistress by now, and I suspected he might even remarry soon. I had decided to move on from Anton, and 6 months had passed. I had a baby who was born safely, and I was now living happily with my parents and the baby. It was while I was enjoying this peaceful life with my family that Anton called again. I ignored his calls at first, but after several persistent attempts, I had no choice but to answer. "Hello, what do you want now?" I said, wary of his tone. "Hey, what's going on? Why were you on that show? And since when were you the daughter of a CEO with assets worth millions of dollars? I never knew that." Anton's voice boomed with surprise and anger. It turned out that Anton had seen a TV show that was broadcasted after I returned to my family home. I had received a request from a TV station after returning to my family's home, thanks to my father's role as the CEO of a renowned global tech company. The show featured the lavish lifestyle of the CEO's family. Producers had come to our house and filmed the lifestyle of my father's family. During the TV show interview, they discussed our family's wealth, mentioning a rough estimate of $10 million. I never imagined Anton would see that show, but the power of television is truly something. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you that I have an asset of $33 million due to an advanced inheritance. That's why I was able to divorce you. Yes, my father informed me about the inheritance, which gave me the confidence to live comfortably even after divorcing Anton. Upon hearing this, Anton's reaction was immediate, and he was furious. "What? That's dirty. Why didn't you tell me about this before? Half of it is mine, right? Give me the money now." I calmly responded, "Just as I suspected. After seeing the show, all you could think of was extorting money from me. Gifts from parents are not included in the property distribution. And are you forgetting your own misdeeds?" Anton was puzzled and asked, "What are you talking about?" I continued, "I'm exasperated with your rage, Anton. You called me yourself. You should know you can't blame me for what you did. You cheated, didn't you, with your new wife? And she's a junior from your company, isn't she? You started dating her even before our marriage." Anton was evidently shocked by the information I got from my father. I finally had the upper hand. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? My father told me he has many acquaintances in your company, and one of them informed me about your affair. I've never mentioned it, but I'll be demanding child support." Anton, still in denial, protested, "Stop kidding, why should I pay child support? It's all because of you, right? You got pregnant on your own and slacked off with household chores. It's all your fault." Hearing Anton blame me without apologizing for his own mistakes was beyond belief. I couldn't believe I was ever married to someone so lacking in common sense. I truly felt it was the right decision to leave him. "Anna, I'm broke. My wife spent all the money I earned, and now I'm drowned in debt." Hearing Anton's pitiful plea, I went from anger to sheer disbelief. I never wanted to deal with such an unreasonable person ever again. With that thought in mind, I firmly gripped my phone. "What are you talking about? Do you even realize how ridiculous you sound? I never want to deal with you ever again. I'll have my lawyer handle the matter of child support. Never call me again, and you will not see the child anymore. Goodbye. Hey, wait." After pouring out my emotions, I quickly hung up the phone. Afterwards, I blocked Anton's number and took a deep breath. Sigh, it's over now, right? I won't get any more calls from Anton. I no longer want him disrupting my peaceful life. Just then, I heard my baby crying from the other room, and I rushed to soothe the baby. It turned out that he began paying child support every month, as per a former colleague's account. Anton claimed that the woman he remarried was quite a spendthrift, and he had to pay his current living expenses with debts. It seemed that, because of these circumstances, Anton had tried to get a share of my inheritance by calling me. However, Anton, who didn't get a penny from me, now had expenses greater than his income. He's struggling, either because he felt things were going south, or he couldn't stand being looked down upon by his colleagues. What's more, he stupidly began his job search only after leaving his current company, resulting in being forced into a life of poverty. Hearing this from a colleague didn't move me in the slightest. I thought he deserved all the hardships. The harsh words and cold demeanor he showed me will never fade from my memory. I sincerely hope he gets what he deserves. On the other hand, I'm enjoying parenting with my parents. I think I'll lead comfortable life without financial worries. But since my father mentioned passing on the company to me, I'm all geared up to work. After all, I am my hard-working father's daughter. I initiated the divorce, so I'm the one who will receive the money from the house through alimony. David casually remarked this and left the hospital room. As I attempted to discuss it with him, David paid no attention. This is how I found myself abandoned, still battling cancer. I became increasingly isolated, but strangely, the knot in my chest seemed to unravel. By this point, my love for David had cooled significantly. I go by the name of Mia, a housewife in my 44S. I live with my husband David. We don't have any children. Since our marriage, I believed we were mutually supportive. However, a wide gap had developed between David and me, one that seemed insurmountable. In a typical marriage, couples support and challenge each other while filling in for each other's weaknesses. But in our case, none of this seemed to apply. One day, when I returned from an errand, David, who had the day off, emerged from his room and demanded his meal. In his eyes, there were no days off for a housewife, and he had the expectation that I should never slack off. Even when I was unwell, David never helped with housework or allowed me to take a break. There were times when I was down with a cold and could hardly get out of bed. Yet even during such moments, when mealtime approached, David would come out of his room and demand that I make food. He showed no inclination to care for me when I was sick. On the contrary, he would often inform me that he had plans with friends, instructing me to leave the house and would return late, sometimes even in a drunken state. In my perspective, marriage entailed mutual support and caring for each other. However, David had a vastly different understanding of marriage. Despite my efforts to bridge this gap during the early days of our marriage, he never admitted to his wrongdoings. He always rebuked me sharply, telling me not to complain, especially as a housewife. My love for David had long since cooled, and I stopped expecting any understanding or support from him. In the midst of it all, something extraordinary happened to my health. Although I had always been prone to illnesses, this time I sensed that something was gravely wrong. I reached out to my father, who then took me to the hospital, where I received a diagnosis of cancer. Fortunately, it was detected early, allowing for prompt treatment. Eager to commence my medical journey, I asked my father to bring me the essentials from home, and I immediately began the admission process. Since David was at work, I sent him a brief message, informing him of my diagnosis and my admission for treatment. In all honesty, when I heard the word cancer, I anticipated a challenging and painful treatment. Anxious about my future, I couldn't help but think of David. Although I believed my love for him had waned completely, I still harbored a part of me that longed for his presence. Despite my cancer and weakening health, David displayed no care or concern for me. He didn't ask if I was okay or offer comforting words. I wanted to see his face, even if it were just for a moment. I wondered how he was faring without me. However, he remained indifferent to my struggles, a reality that weighed heavily on my mind. While I knew I shouldn't expect anything from David, I couldn't help but wonder if it was wrong to desire his support during my weakest moments. Was it such a selfish desire to want him to worry and care for me, even just a little bit? I'd never intended to burden him, only to seek some solace in his support. David never acknowledged this, and the more I realized this, the more distance grew between us. I stopped expecting anything from David, and gradually felt that continuing our relationship was pointless. In the midst of battling my cancer, an unexpected revelation unfolded. I had invested some money and managed to accumulate $15 million over the past 5 years. The $15 million in my bank book, which David found, was the profit I had earned. While I hadn't intended to keep this wealth a secret indefinitely, David chose to divorce me before I could disclose it. He never gave me the opportunity to reveal it to him. As a result, I was determined not to share the money with someone who was no longer my husband. I was certain that all $15 million would be mine. When I revealed this secret to David, his reaction was predictable. He demanded the money and insisted that it should compensate for my sin of keeping the secret. David's selfishness was glaring. He asserted that a wife's assets belonged to her husband. I never intended to keep this a secret forever, but I was waiting for the right moment to share it with him. However, David's unilateral decision to divorce me left me with no choice but to deal with it on my own. The more we talked, the colder my feelings toward David became. Continuing the conversation seemed pointless, as he continually painted me as the villain. I couldn't bear the thought of engaging with him any further, and my anger towards him grew uncontrollable. I couldn't help but feel foolish for having suffered and struggled for such a selfish man. I had expected his support, even during my illness, and despite my hopes, he never showed his face. I grew tired of suffering for someone who had been so self-centered. David continued to make outrageous demands, further confirming that reasoning with him was futile. As I realized that, my next move became clear. "Please stop it," I said. "You initiated the divorce, didn't you? You forced me into it." Adopting an accommodating attitude wouldn't work anymore. David's reaction was an outburst of anger, and I couldn't help but feel that he had gone too far. My feelings had cooled too. I attempted to engage in conversation with David, but he never admitted any wrongdoing. He'd sharply rebuke me, insisting that I shouldn't complain, especially as a housewife. My love for David had long since waned. It wasn't that I wanted to depend on him entirely. I'm a human being too, and like everyone else, I had my challenging days. I simply believed that he could offer some support during those times. However, David refused to acknowledge this need. As I realized this, the gap between David and me continued to widen. Gradually, I lost the desire to confront David, and as days passed, I even started to dread facing him in our frigid marital relationship. I knew better than anyone that continuing this relationship was futile. Amidst all this, something extraordinary happened to my health. While I'd always been susceptible to falling ill, this time, I knew something was seriously amiss. I reached out to my father, who was at our ancestral home, and he rushed me to the hospital. The doctor diagnosed me with cancer, but fortunately, it was detected at an early stage, leaving room for treatment. Eager to begin treatment promptly, I asked my father to bring the essentials from home and immediately went through the admission process. David was at work, so I briefly informed him via a message that I'd been diagnosed with cancer and was being admitted to the hospital for treatment. Honestly, when I heard the word cancer, I anticipated a challenging and painful treatment. Anxieties about the future flooded my thoughts, and during those trying moments, David came to my mind. I believed my love for him had completely faded, but deep within, I might have still longed to face him and spend time as a married couple. Given my current weakened state, I even hoped that someone as unfeeling as David, who had never shown any concern for me, might worry. I wished he'd ask, "Are you okay?" and say some kind words. A single visit from him would have sufficed. I wanted to see David's face, even if only once. I wondered if he struggled with daily life in my absence, and my thoughts drifted to what he might be going through now. I felt a deep sense of guilt for my inability to manage household chores. However, despite waiting for several days, David never appeared. My messages to him were marked as "read," but I received no response, not even a simple acknowledgement like "okay," let alone the words, "Are you okay?" It seemed as though he didn't care about me at all, even in the face of my battle with cancer and my weakened state. This harsh reality weighed heavily on my mind, causing unbearable pain. I knew it might have been foolish to have expectations, but was it so wrong to desire my husband's care and concern during my moments of weakness? It wasn't about burdening David. I simply yearned for him to show some worry, to care for me, even just a little. Even this small selfishness wasn't granted. At that point, I resolved to stop expecting anything from David. With this determination, I continued to fiercely battle my cancer. As expected, the fight was excruciating, with the medications taking a toll on my body. Countless sleepless nights due to discomfort led me to contemplate stopping the treatment, allowing my deteriorating body to take its course and face the end. However, each time my parents assured me that it would get better, providing encouraging words, I found the strength to persevere. One day, while I was feeling unwell and staring blankly at the ceiling from my bed, my room's door suddenly swung open. I wasn't anticipating my parents' visit that day, so I wondered who the unexpected visitor might be. As I turned my gaze, I saw David. I pondered if he had finally come to check on me out of concern, seeing how emaciated and drained I had become. A multitude of thoughts raced through my mind, rendering me speechless. Ignoring my initial reaction, David sat down in the chair next to my bed. He quietly observed me and then let out a mocking laugh. "So, cancer does this to you, huh? You look terrible, hardly like a woman at all." His words sent a chilling shiver down my spine. Of all things, he shouldn't have said that to someone still battling cancer. I wished that David would remain silent, but he continued to inflict more hurtful words on me, disregarding my feelings. He mentioned how every day had been wonderful for him since my absence. He admitted that the house was a mess, but life without me had surprisingly become easy. David's cruel words cut even deeper, and I wondered why I had to endure such painful comments from him. There wasn't a single comforting word to be found. I yearned to lash out at him, but my weakened body refused to cooperate, leaving me with no choice but to quietly absorb his hurtful remarks. I gazed at David with empty eyes, and as I did, I noticed him chuckling mockingly. Then, he uttered something entirely unbelievable. "By the way, I've already filed for divorce. I'll take the house in the property division, and you won't have a say in it." The room seemed to spin at his words. He had filed for divorce without my consent, and I was left in shock. Before I could gather my thoughts, David continued speaking, dropping another bombshell. "One day," he said, "I've fallen in love with someone else. She's 24 years younger than me, but I'm serious about her. You're in the way of us being together." The possibility of an affair raced through my mind, but David, perhaps having said his piece, their days felt incredibly long. I was tormented by uncertainty. Did David truly finalize the divorce as he said, or were his words intended to play on my anxieties? Perhaps there was no divorce at all. The one thing that kept me going was a secret plan to completely expose David. I was aware that once he found out about it, even someone as cold-hearted as David would be shaken. I believed that a revelation like this would surely prompt David to contact me. With that in mind, I waited, and sure enough, David called me today. I couldn't take the call in my hospital room, so I ignored it. But David, as persistent as ever, kept calling, despite my phone being on silent mode. The constant vibrations were annoying, so I texted him, "Stop calling, it's annoying." Finally, the calls ceased, but then the messages started pouring in. "Please, I want to talk just once. I'll apologize for everything," and many more. If he couldn't reach me by call, he'd try by text. Every single message was clearly driven by self-preservation. Perhaps David had realized why I had so readily accepted the unilateral divorce. "Can I come to see you?" When I didn't respond, David, perhaps growing impatient, sent that message. Honestly, given my current exhaustion from fighting my illness, the idea of meeting David was almost torturous. However, I figured if I declined, he'd incessantly call, so I replied, "Fine." My revenge plot was about to begin. David, who had treated me poorly for so long and even forced me to divorce, deserved a harsh punishment. Eagerly anticipating David's arrival, I was determined to bring him down. When David entered my hospital room, his voice revealed his panic, showing that he was already feeling cornered. To an outsider, David's reaction might seem a bit over the top, but it was only natural for him to be this frantic. After all, I had a secret ace up my sleeve. "What the hell are you thinking?" With that outburst, David entered my hospital room. His voice clearly revealed his panic, indicating that he was already feeling cornered. To an outsider, David's reaction might seem excessive, but it was only natural for him to be this frantic. After all, I had a secret card to play. "I had no idea you had assets worth $15 million. If I knew about this money, why didn't you tell me?" Saying this, David placed my bank book on the table. The book clearly showed that I had over $1 billion saved up. "Well, you never asked. Who would imagine that a housewife like you would have this kind of money? I would have never divorced you. Maybe you shouldn't have impulsively forced me to divorce. Don't play word games with me. And where did you even get this kind of money from?" David, who unilaterally divorced me without my consent, was now complaining that he'd have acted differently if he'd known about my $15 million. It was so self-centered of David to assert that he'd have changed his decision had he known about the money. I decided it was time to let David in on the secret. Actually, the source of this $15 million was from investments I began as a mere pastime. The one who suggested I try investing was my parents. Although David's salary alone was enough for us as a couple to live comfortably, I always wanted to contribute something to our finances. My father was knowledgeable about investments, and when I expressed interest, he taught me hands-on how to invest. Under my father's guidance, I began investing little by little, initially aiming to make even a small profit. I first started investing about 5 years ago. Since then, I've honed my skills considerably. Now, I've become so proficient that even my father exclaims, "I never thought you'd grow this much." The $15 million recorded in the passbook David brought was the profit I earned over those there years. I actually intended to tell David at the right time, but then I was diagnosed with cancer, and David decided to force me to divorce. I never intended to take this secret to the grave. Once I recovered from cancer and could return to a normal life, I had planned to confide in David about the $15 million, and as a couple, we intended to share the money to ensure our life together. But before that could happen, David made the unilateral decision to divorce. It would be absurd to share the money with someone who's no longer my husband. Given the circumstances, all $15 million will probably be mine. Hearing my story, David's face turned crimson with rage. "If I had known you had this much money, I wouldn't have divorced you. You're at fault for not revealing it immediately. Pay me alimony right now, the $15 million, to compensate for the sin of keeping secrets from your husband." Faced with such a vast sum, David seemed to be either overwhelmed or simply unable to accept that he wouldn't be getting the money. Either way, he was making outrageous demands. Now that we're divorced, no matter how things turn out, there's absolutely no way I'm giving the $15 million to David. And yet, David was so desperate to get his hands on the $15 million right in front of him that he was saying absolutely unthinkable things. I couldn't help but chuckle. "What are you laughing at?" David said. "Enough with the disrespect. I've always been irritated by your attitude. Did you ever think it's arrogant for a wife to have such wealth? A wife's assets are her husband's, so you should hand over these assets to me." "What do you mean, a wife's assets belong to the husband? I never intended to keep the existence of this money hidden forever. It's just that you went ahead and divorced me before I could reveal it. Stop making excuses," David accused me, although I didn't recall making any ridiculous excuses. Every time I spoke, David turned to berate, accuse, blame, and belittle me. Frankly, as someone recovering from illness, David's shouting was hard to bear. It resonated in my head unbearably. It was clear that trying to discuss anything further would be futile. No matter what I said, David would probably never listen and continue to paint me as the villain. Once I realized that it was impossible to reason with David, My next move was swift. Please stop it. You are the one who went ahead and divorced, right? You forced me to divorce, right? I always knew you were cruel, but I never imagined you'd go this far. When one reaches their limit, can they really become this enraged? What I feel now is not the pain from cancer, but anger towards David. Raising my voice this way will undoubtedly affect my body, but my anger towards this selfish person who was shamelessly sitting beside my bed and blaming me with every word he could think of was unstoppable. When I was diagnosed with cancer, you can't imagine what went through my mind. I thought, maybe now David would worry about me a bit, that he might change his ways and start caring for me. Yet what did you do? You didn't visit me in the hospital, and when you finally did, you filed for divorce and claimed our house. Now that you know about my wealth, you come and blame me like this. Are you kidding me? I'll say it again. I never intended to keep it a secret forever. I was waiting for the right time to tell you, and you ruined that chance. I had never blamed David in this manner before. I always accepted David's selfish actions, thinking that we were a married couple and should stay together without making any complaints or holding any resentment. I always did my best for him. The reason I still wanted to make it work was because of my love for David. I truly loved him. But now, all I feel is an uncontrollable anger and disbelief towards a man who only says selfish things. How did he become so selfish? What kind of education does one receive to become such a person, completely devoid of consideration for others? While I am at a loss for words and utterly appalled, I realize it is futile to question this. As a person who would engage in infidelity, proceed with a divorce without consent, and expect sane reasoning from them is beyond comprehension. "Please, I'm begging you," she said. "She'll definitely divorce me unless I bring her the $15 million. Knowing that you have that amount, if I can't get that money from you, I'll be left all alone. You like me, don't you? Don't you have any feelings of wanting to help the person you like?" From what I've heard from David, it appears that his mistress is also quite greedy. Birds of a feather flock together, I suppose. I couldn't help but think that they are well suited for each other, to such an extent that David's circumstances, and whatever suffering he might endure in the future, no longer mattered to me. I was able to completely detach myself from him. "I'm really begging you. I'll do anything. Please, give me the $15 million. If not, I'm going to be in big trouble. Please help me out," David said, kneeling down on the spot, his plea laden with desperation. I had never seen David this desperate before, and his state seemed utterly ridiculous to me. At the same time, I felt a mix of disappointment and despair, akin to the feelings of having been let down because he never showed such desperation for me. The more we talked, the colder my feelings for David became. I couldn't help but feel that continuing the conversation was pointless. The more I interacted with this selfish man, the more certain I became that it would not lead to my happiness. I couldn't help but think that I was foolish for suffering and struggling for such a selfish man, and for expecting, even during my illness, that he might show his face someday. Despite my feelings, David continued to beg desperately, saying, "Please, I'm begging you, help me." However, listening to David's words any longer became the most painful thing for me. "Please leave," I said. David began to plead, "Don't say things like that," adopting a buttering-up attitude. Even that was unbearable to me. At this point, I pressed the nurse call button and called the nurse. After explaining the situation and asking them to remove David, the nurse called the security guard, and David was escorted out. "Please just hear me out, you're the only one who can help," he kept declaring this until the end, but I completely shut out his words. Even after that, David frequently visited the hospital. However, since the nurses were aware of the situation, he was never allowed to enter my room. According to my friends, since David couldn't secure the $15 million, the woman he had an affair with became disappointed in him. She soon proposed a divorce, and now he's reportedly single. On the other hand, I continued to bravely fight against my cancer, and just recently, I was declared completely healed and was able to be discharged from the hospital. Thanks to overcoming my illness, my body now feels invigorated. The sensation of being healthy again is more precious than anything else. Currently, I'm using a portion of the $15 million I had saved up, and I'm leading a relaxed life. To be honest, I'm already 44 and have had enough of marriage. I think I'll probably live out the rest of my life alone. I feel there's nothing wrong with living my life unbound by anyone.
Before I knew it, quite some time had passed, and I could already see the sunset on the horizon. I told my daughter it was time to leave the sea. At that moment, I had a bad feeling about what was about to happen. My husband, Relay, and my mother-in-law, Helen, had vanished, and I heard the sound of a boat revving its engines. To my shock, Relay had boarded the boat and left my daughter and me on the shore. "Hey, why are you leaving us?" I shouted in panic as I tried to swim towards the boat, but it quickly drifted away. I realized chasing after it would be futile, and I might get hurt in the process. Relay's voice echoed back, callously stating, "It's not like we're related by blood anyway, so this should be fine." I was utterly stunned, and Helen, who had been watching from the boat, laughed and said, "Look at that dumb face." Relay shot me a disdainful look, and the boat continued to sail away. My name is Tina, and I'm a 29-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, Relay, and our 5-year-old daughter, Molly. Molly is an exceptionally diligent and talented child, excelling in her studies, sports, and her piano lessons, which she started at the age of 3. She's incredibly adorable and my pride and joy. My life with Molly is a source of happiness, but things haven't been going well with Relay. We met about 8 years ago when I joined the company as a new employee, and Relay, being 1 year my senior, became my mentor during my on-the-job training, OJT. I was initially attracted to Relay because of his strong work ethic and how dedicated he was to teaching me the ropes at my job. Our professional relationship naturally evolved into a personal one, and we started dating. After 2 years of dating, we decided to tie the knot. Our early days as newlyweds were filled with happiness, and Relay took excellent care of me. I was certain of his deep love for me. When Molly was born, he doted on her, often calling her his little angel. His affection for her was undeniable. Relay's love for Molly was so apparent that I jokingly thought he might faint if she ever mentioned getting married in the future. However, things took an unexpected turn when Molly turned about 2 years old. Relay's attitude shifted drastically. He became cold and distant, seemingly uncaring about both me and our daughter. I couldn't comprehend the sudden transformation. It weighed heavily on me, and after about a month of this behavior, I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted Relay, demanding answers. "Relay, why have you been so distant from me and Molly lately?" I asked. "Did I do something to upset you? I don't understand what's causing this change, and it's deeply troubling." I was shouting out of frustration, struggling to make sense of Relay's abrupt alteration in attitude. Relay responded calmly, dropping a bombshell. "It's because that child is not mine," he said. I was taken aback, utterly bewildered. "What? Molly is undoubtedly your daughter," I countered, attempting to reason with him. Relay remained unconvinced. "Because she doesn't look anything like me," he said. I vehemently disagreed with his assessment. Molly is only 2 years old, and it's challenging to determine her full resemblance. I'm confident that as she grows, her likeness to you will become more apparent, I reassured my husband. But Relay, in his shallow reasoning, was insistent. "No, you're wrong. She has green eyes, and they're pretty big. I have blue eyes, so it's impossible for us to have a child with beautiful green eyes like this." I was left in shock by his simplistic logic. "No, listen to me. I have green eyes, so she likely inherited them from me," I explained, hoping to convince him. However, Relay, though somewhat swayed, refused to fully accept it, likely due to his pride. "I think you're just trying to deceive me," he responded, still skeptical. I implored him, "That's not true. You have to trust me." Afterward, Relay requested some time to contemplate the situation and went back to his parents' house. During that time, I found myself questioning his thoughts and growing increasingly distrustful. I wondered whether we could build a stable family together as parents, let alone maintain our marriage. When Relay returned to his parents' home, it appeared he had presented the situation only from his perspective. His mother, Helen, contacted me and expressed her displeasure. Eventually, we held a discussion at their house, and it was decided that we would conduct a DNA test to resolve the issue conclusively. Riley initially resisted the idea, claiming that he knew without a doubt that Molly wasn't his child. Still, when I insisted on the test, he reluctantly agreed. After the results came in, it was confirmed that Molly was indeed his child. Staring at me in disbelief, Rila uttered, "You're kidding!" But my father-in-law, Pete, intervened, saying, "The results are clear. Why don't you admit your mistake and apologize to Tina?" Relay, seemingly shocked by Pete's stern words, finally came to his senses. He humbly apologized, bowing his head. "Tina, I'm sorry I doubted you. I don't know what came over me." I forgave him. For the moment, I understand that some people might consider divorce at this point. But I had chosen to be a housewife when I got married. Financially, I wasn't self-sufficient, and I didn't want to take Molly's father away from her when she was just 2 years old. Moreover, I had entered this marriage after falling in love genuinely, and I didn't want to jump into a divorce immediately. In hindsight, I would later regret not pursuing a divorce from Relay at that time. Despite the awkward atmosphere between us, we tried to maintain our married life. Slowly, we started communicating more and began feeling like a married couple, at least for the time being. However, Relay had difficulty connecting with Molly. Whenever I encouraged him to play with her, he'd respond awkwardly, saying something like, yeah, sure, before quickly passing her back to me, saying that I was better at this. In the end, Relay seldom played with Molly as she continued to grow. By the time Molly turned 5, her curiosity and interest in various topics were evident. She was an avid reader, always asking questions when she encountered something new. One day she asked about history, a subject in which Relay excelled. I suggested she pose her question to him, believing he'd provide a better response. Molly eagerly approached Relay with her inquiry. I made every effort to bridge the gap between Relay and Molly, but he continuously brushed her off, saying, "You get a better answer if you ask your mother." Molly was left perplexed, asking, "Well, who should I ask?" I approached Relay, encouraging him to engage with Molly, saying, "Molly is asking you, so you should pay more attention to her." In response, Relay callously replied, "You're there for this kind of thing, so if you're there, then there's no need for me." I was deeply dismayed by his response, wondering why he was so reluctant to spend time with Molly. It was evident that she felt a bit neglected due to her father's indifference. I was determined to find a way to bring our family closer, but Relay refused to allocate time for the family. Molly's dedication to her piano practice and studies was partly driven by her strong work ethic, but also her desire for her father's attention. My frustration with Relay continued to mount, and one night I couldn't contain it any longer. I confronted him, exclaiming, "That's enough! Why are you avoiding Molly? She's trying so hard to bond with her father. You haven't even attended her piano recital once." Relay responded as if he were being coerced into doing something he vehemently disliked. He said, "I'm letting her do whatever she wants, so I am fulfilling my role as a father. You're too strict with your own daughter." I protested, reminding him that we had undergone a DNA test. Relay remained unconvinced and retreated to his room, leaving me exasperated, wondering how to change his perspective. Amid my worries, Relay abruptly suggested, "Let's go on a family trip to Hawaii, including your parents." It was an unexpected proposal, intended for the two of us to travel together. I was overjoyed when I heard Relay's proposal. He was finally making an effort to spend time with his daughter and me. This trip to Hawaii promised to be an opportunity for Molly to create cherished memories with her father. Upon our arrival in Hawaii, Relay surprised us by revealing that he had arranged for a small yet splendid boat. The excitement of the day ahead filled us with anticipation as we set sail into the sea. Molly's bright smile mirrored the enthusiasm, and it was a heartwarming sight. Relay held a boat driving license, allowing us to embark on a voyage to a nearby deserted island that day. My father-in-law, Pete, opted to stay behind this time as he had other plans and visits to make in Hawaii. Our arrival at the deserted island left us captivated by its beauty, with Molly utterly fascinated by the pristine surroundings. Relay had prepared snorkeling gear, and he eagerly plunged into the water ahead of us. Shortly after, he invited Molly and me to join him. I watched with delight as Relay patiently guided Jessica through her first snorkeling experience. It was a moment that filled me with joy, seeing Relay gradually embrace his role as a father, and Jessica was equally delighted to have her dad teaching her. In no time, Molly began to grasp the fundamentals of snorkeling, and the pride on her face was unmistakable. Relay, taking a short break from the water, said, "I'm going to rest," and stepped out of the sea. I stayed in the water, ensuring that Molly remained safe and didn't venture too far as we enjoyed our underwater exploration together. However, as the day slipped away and the sun began to set, a sense of unease washed over me. It was at this moment that Relay's unexpected departure unfolded. His, along with my mother-in-law Helena's belongings, had vanished from the beach, and the sound of an engine revving signaled the departure of the boat. I was left in disbelief, calling out, "Hey!" as I watched Relay sail away, leaving my daughter and me stranded on the deserted island by the sea. Desperation filled me as I swam frantically towards the boat, shouting, "Why are you leaving us?" But despite my efforts, I couldn't close the gap between us. I hesitated to risk injury by reaching out to the boat. Relay's callous words, "It's not like we're related by blood anyway, so this should be fine," caught me by surprise and left me stunned. Helen peered out from the bow of the boat, laughing heartily at my dumbfounded expression, while Relay regarded me with disdain before their boat disappeared into the distance, abandoning my daughter and me on the deserted island. I rushed back to the island where Molly awaited me, her eyes wide with fear. The gravity of our situation weighed heavily on my shoulders. Stranded on a deserted island, I hugged Molly, trying to reassure her that everything would be all right. The reality, however, was grim, and even though I had some portable food that would last a day or two, it wouldn't sustain us for long. Trying to stay composed for Molly's sake, I said, "Let's warm up for now. We might catch a cold after being in the water," as I dried her hair and body with the towel I had packed. Together, we collected slender branches and dead leaves to build a fire, and fortunately, I had brought a lighter for such an occasion. The fire gradually flickered to life, providing us with warmth. Still, an underlying anxiety gnawed at me, wondering if help would ever come. Approximately 2 hours after Relay's departure, a small boat approached us. I jumped to my feet, waving my arms and repeatedly shouting for help. The boat stopped nearby, and the man on board inquired about our well-being before gesturing for us to come aboard. It turned out the man was a staff member from the boat rental shop who had provided Relay with the boat. As we settled on the boat, he began to explain the situation. The man from the boat rental shop explained that when Relay returned the boat, both he and Helen hastily left, raising his suspicions. He became concerned about the number of people who left the boat, prompting him to visit the island and ensure our safety. Relief overwhelmed me, and I couldn't hold back my tears. Molly was sleeping soundly in my arms, likely exhausted from the ordeal. We safely returned to the island where our hotel was located. After expressing our gratitude to the kind-hearted individuals who had helped us, Molly and I headed back to the hotel. In the lobby, I encountered Pete. "Oh, Tina, weren't you with my son and wife?" Pete asked, noticing my fatigued appearance. His perceptive eyes immediately grasped that something was amiss. He suggested we sit in the lounge, where I shared the harrowing events of the day. I recounted how we had been abandoned on the deserted island, and how Relay had distanced himself from Molly in recent times. Pete listened attentively, and when I finished, he lowered his head and apologized for what Relay and Helen had done to us. Pete had always been a supportive figure, the only one who consistently sought the truth during Relay's doubts about Molly's parentage, and who had always cherished his grandchild. Determined to take action, Pete proposed, "Let's teach them a lesson." I agreed, and together we approached the hotel's front desk. Fortunately, Relay and Helen had not returned to the hotel yet, most likely dining at a restaurant. Since I had made the reservation, I decided to cancel our stay, ensuring Relay and Helen wouldn't have a place to stay either. P had intended to stay at his friend's residence in the vicinity, and he had been waiting for us at the hotel to inform us about this arrangement. So P suggested, "Tina, you should come with me." And accompanied by Molly, I followed him to his friend's house. His friend and his wife warmly welcomed us upon our arrival. At that moment, Molly had awakened and was relishing a delicious homemade meal thoughtfully prepared by our gracious hosts. However, my peace was soon disrupted by a phone call indicating that Relay and Helen had run into trouble with the police. This occurred because they had caused quite a commotion due to their inability to check in at the hotel, despite having made a reservation. The hotel staff hastily reported the incident, prompting a swift response from the police. Relay and Helen vehemently protested, stating, "We made a reservation," likely fearing that they were being taken advantage of. Yet, failing to comply with the police's instructions led to their arrest. Despite their pleas for assistance, Pete and I declined to intervene on their behalf. I informed the police about how Relay and Helen had deserted Molly and me on a remote island. The authorities also obtained a statement from the boat rental shop staff, which served as evidence. Consequently, Relay and Helen faced criminal charges and found themselves in a precarious predicament. In a state of panic, my husband hastily acquired a lawyer, posted a substantial bail, and incurred significant financial losses overnight. Moreover, they spent several days in jail until they were released on bail, which left Relay and Helen both physically and emotionally drained. It was a sense of satisfaction to witness their predicament, as I couldn't help but think about how much worse our situation could have been if the boat staff hadn't come to our rescue. Molly and I returned home ahead of the others, packed our belongings, and headed to my parents' house. Upon Relay's return, I confronted him with divorce papers via my lawyer and demanded alimony to compensate for the emotional distress he had caused my daughter and me. It was during this time that, through my lawyer, I asked Relay why he had taken the actions he did and why he had shown so little interest in his own daughter until now. According to the lawyer, Relay explained that he had abruptly lost all affection for our daughter once he began suspecting that she might not be his biological child. I was utterly appalled and shocked to hear Relay's words. Even though a proper DNA test had confirmed Molly's biological connection to him, he still couldn't believe that she was his own child. I couldn't help but regret not having separated Molly from such a horrible father much earlier. Following our divorce, Relay was legally obligated to pay alimony and child support, which left him buried in debt. Additionally, I reported this shocking incident to my former boss, who still worked for the same company. Consequently, Relay's disgraceful behavior quickly spread throughout the company, and he became widely known as the man who attempted to abandon his wife and child to their fate. It seems he is now deeply ashamed of himself. Struggling with debt, Relay was unable to quit his job, causing stress to take a toll on him. On the other hand, Pete divorced Helen because of her involvement in this incident. Helen, who had relied on Pete's salary, found herself without a job and was forced to leave their home. Desperate, she reached out to Relay for assistance, but he heartlessly refused, claiming that he couldn't afford to help her. As a result, she now resides in a modest apartment and works a part-time job. Meanwhile, I secured a new job, rented an apartment suitable for just Molly and me, and started a fresh chapter of life with my daughter. Molly no longer regards Relay as her father and wholeheartedly showers her affection and love on me. She diligently practices the piano every day and often declares, "I'm going to win the next competition for you, Mommy. I'll work hard to make money so that you, Mommy, can do what you love." Leaving them stranded on a deserted island was undeniably a crime, and I firmly believe that both Relay and Helen should be held accountable for their actions. However, I'm profoundly grateful that Pete displayed decency and compassion throughout this ordeal. I hope that Tina continues to lead a joyful and fulfilling life with her beloved daughter, Molly.
When I was 16, my parents threw me out of the house due to poor academic performance. Facing homelessness at such a young age, I eventually navigated through these challenging circumstances to establish a successful business that generates a three-figure income. However, when my parents attempted to take credit for my achievements in public, I felt compelled to reveal the truth about their treatment towards me. I am now 27 years old. My parents, despite living in the US for 2 generations, seem to have missed out on adopting more supportive child-rearing practices commonly observed here. They obsessed over academic success to the detriment of my childhood, believing that top grades were the sole path to success. This fixation was intensified by the constant comparisons they drew between me and my older sister, who consistently excelled in school. During my elementary school years, I managed to perform well, but things changed dramatically once my sister set the bar extremely high, topping her class with stellar grades. This only heightened my parents' disappointment when my own grades began to falter in middle school. They regularly compared my results with my sister's past performance, adding an unbearable pressure that only worsened my academic decline. With each drop in my grades, my parents' frustration escalated. They subjected me to harsh punishments ranging from kneeling for hours without food or water to depriving me of meals the night before exams to help me focus. They would also confine me at home, restrict my access to video games, and withhold treats like ice cream and chocolate. Any requests for these were met with a stern, "Get good grades first." In stark contrast to their upbringing, my parents run a small cafe shop, a leap from my grandparents' days as laborers and janitors after immigrating here. Yet, despite their progress in some areas of life, their parenting approach, particularly their emphasis on academic success at any cost, was something I could not accept or forget. As I established my own path and built my business from the ground up, their attempt to claim credit for my success in front of others was the last straw. I felt it was necessary to set the record straight and publicly address the real challenges and adversities I faced due to their actions throughout my upbringing. A doctor or a computer engineer, professions they believed would offer me a more secure and prosperous future. Despite their aspirations, my grandparents had to hold down multiple jobs to support my father and his brothers, sacrificing their own comforts in the process. My father was compelled to leave his studies prematurely at the age of 15 to contribute to the family's income. A similar pattern of sacrifice and hard work was evident in my mother's family as well. From their teenage years through their 20s, my parents worked tirelessly, saving every penny they could to eventually open a modest cafe shop at the street corner. They were driven by the conviction that academic excellence was their only escape from poverty. This belief is quite common in Asian cultures, where there is a strong emphasis on saving for uncertain times, often at the expense of present needs. While I deeply respect the sacrifices my parents made and their belief in the power of education, I feel they took it to an extreme. They seemed to think that achieving high grades was the sole measure of success. In reality, while maintaining good grades is important, the occasional setback, like repeating a grade, isn't the end of the world. It just sets you back slightly compared to your peers, which is perfectly acceptable. As a child, I tried hard to live up to the academic standards set by my sister. Despite my efforts, I found it difficult to memorize and retain information as efficiently as she could. My strengths lay in problem solving and calculations, skills that didn't require rote learning. However, the harsh punishments from my parents when I didn't meet their expectations led me to rebel. I began skipping classes, hanging out on the playground, and filling my exam papers with jokes and song lyrics to express my frustration. My parents' response was to confine me to the basement with my books during weekends and vacations until I finished my lessons. They restricted my outdoor playtime and took away all my video games and comics, refusing to buy any new ones. Despite their strict measures, I always found ways to sneak out and play, especially when my parents were busy at the store during the day. When they discovered my escapades, they began taking me to the cafe shop with them on weekends and during summer vacations. What was meant to be a punishment turned into an enjoyable experience for me. I relished the interaction with customers, helping them choose products, and managing the cash register. Contrary to my parents' wishes for me to pursue a high-status profession, I found joy and fulfillment in running the cafe shop. This experience taught me the value of finding one's own path in life, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. It also showed me that while my parents' intentions were rooted in love and protection, finding a balance between guidance and freedom is crucial for personal development and happiness. In a society where the professions of doctor or computer engineer are held in the highest esteem, my declaration of wanting to become was met with disbelief and disapproval by my parents. To them, sales was a job for the uneducated, not for someone who was receiving a costly education. They expected me to pursue a respectable career as either a doctor or a computer engineer. This tension escalated when I received an F in my first year of high school, which led to me having to repeat the year. My parents were beyond upset, feeling that all their efforts and punishments had failed. Their reaction was severe. They expressed their disappointment through harsh words and extreme measures, excluding physical punishment. They told me I had shamed the family and could no longer be part of the home. Heartbroken and with nowhere to turn, as my social life was restricted, I faced the harsh reality of fending for myself. Despite the daunting beginning, being on my own soon brought a surprising sense of liberation. I was free to make my own choices, free from the constant scrutiny and expectations. My first night alone, I slept on a park bench, but by the next day, I was determined to leverage my sales skills. I visited numerous stores and eventually my persistence paid off. I secured a job at a makeup store, despite having no qualifications or experience. The owner, needing help urgently, tested me by asking me to sell an expensive lipstick to a customer who only wanted a night cream. Miraculously, I succeeded, impressing the owner with my passion and ability to connect with customers. Though the pay was modest, the job gave me a sense of purpose and a proof that I could thrive on my own terms. This new chapter was not just about survival, it was about defining my own path and embracing my true talents in sales, which were once dismissed by my own family. At a young age, I began working at my parents' cafe shop, a move they believed was a form of punishment. Little did they realize it was actually a boon for me, providing real-world experience that I found more valuable than the dry academic learning at school. This early job was my stepping stone into the business world. As sales at the store increased, I negotiated commissions for my efforts, marking the start of my entrepreneurial journey. Despite their initial reservations, working in the store showed me the ropes of business, a lesson I cherished more than they knew. Over time, I pursued higher-paying opportunities, constantly gaining knowledge and skills along the way. I even turned down an offer from one employer who proposed to pay for my college, as my ambitions were already drawing me in a different direction, starting my own venture. At the ripe age of 27, I founded my company. We specialize in providing support and sales services to other small businesses, helping them increase their sales and revenues through hefty commissions. We started modestly, with just 3 employees and a single client selling mattresses and pillows. Now, 3 years later, our team has grown to 327 sales agents, collaborating with over 67 companies across various industries, from credit cards to cosmetics and books. Building this business wasn't quick or easy, but our perseverance paid off. Amidst this business success, my personal life has taken an interesting turn. Recently, my mom has been actively engaging with my social media profiles, liking old posts and photos. Whether she's simply trying to reconnect or reminding me of her presence, one thing is clear: my lifestyle has captivated her. They once doubted my potential, assuming I'd never succeed without academic excellence. Yet here I am, thriving financially and proving them wrong. Just last week, my mom reached out, expressing her longing to see me and conveying how proud she and my dad are of my accomplishments. Despite her praise, I hesitated to respond. The memories of past humiliations at their hands linger, tempting me to confront them with my success. Yet, my girlfriend advises caution, suggesting that revisiting my past might entangle me in emotional manipulations, possibly aimed at exploiting me financially. So, here I am, torn between the desire to showcase my success to those who doubted me and the advice of my girlfriend, who fears their potential ulterior motives. What should I do? Update. Despite my girlfriend's warnings, part of me is still drawn to the idea of making a point to my parents about my success. What are your thoughts on handling this delicate situation? I went to their house after a long time. Dad wasn't home, but Mom and my sister were waiting for me. Dad still has no idea about how successful I've become. He thinks I'm earning money by scamming innocent people and doesn't want anything to do with me. He's so stuck in his old school thinking that he can't see how far I've come. When I arrived, Mom apologized to me. She said I had to suffer because of Dad's strict belief that only good grades in school lead to a successful life. It was almost funny. She was blaming Dad for everything, pretending she had no part in it. But I remember clearly how she used to be even harsher than Dad when it came to punishing me. When I brought this up, she quickly brushed it off. She said she was only following Dad's orders, being a good wife. When I pushed further and pointed out how she had treated me, she just laughed and called it ancient history, saying we should all forget the past and be a happy family again. I decided not to argue more and instead asked my sister how she was doing. She told me she had finished her master's degree in literature, but was struggling to find a teaching job. The problem? She didn't have strong communication skills or confidence in social situations. I already knew why. Our parents kept her locked in a bubble her whole life. Still, I pretended to be curious and asked why her top grades weren't helping her land a job. She blamed our parents for it. And honestly, she wasn't wrong. She had spent her entire childhood stuck in a room, constantly studying to win Mom and Dad's approval. She never got to live a normal life. Even though she's older than me by a year, I remember how lonely she was at school. She had barely any friends because Mom wouldn't allow it. Mom believed that white kids weren't serious about their studies and would be a bad influence, so she didn't let my sister hang out with anyone. And look at the result. Despite being a top student, she can't get hired. No one wants to hire someone who can't communicate well, no matter how good their qualifications are. Watching her struggle made me secretly grateful for being the rebellious one. If I had followed their rules like she did, I would probably be in the same boat, trapped and hopeless. They tried to isolate me too. They didn't want me to make friends or do anything outside of schoolwork. But I didn't listen, and now I realize how right I was to stand up for myself. Later, my sister and I talked more openly. She actually agreed with me and started calling out Mom for the way they raised us. For once, I wasn't alone. Mom started crying and, very cleverly, tried to shift all the blame onto Dad, as if she had nothing to do with it. After we got all our frustrations out and blamed her for our messed up childhood, I finally asked the question that had been bothering me the whole time. Why did she call me back home after all these years? She kept going on and on, showering me with compliments, telling me how proud she was of my success. But deep down, I knew she had absolutely no idea what I actually did for a living. As I've mentioned before, in most Asian households, the idea of success is pretty one-dimensional. Become a doctor, an engineer, or maybe get a high-paying job at a bank. Anything else? Especially something like entrepreneurship? That's just confusing to them. In their eyes, if you say you're running a business, they automatically picture you running a small cafe shop or corner shop, and not in a good way. They look down on that. Sitting in that house, listening to her sugar-coated words, brought back a flood of memories from my childhood. I remember the times when my parents had me convinced that if I didn't get perfect grades, I'd end up homeless, living on the streets like a failure. They even went as far as telling me there was something wrong with me, mentally. All because I couldn't consistently score A+ in school. Oh, and I almost forgot. My parents even took me to see a therapist. They were convinced I had some kind of focus issue or learning disability. After just 2 or 4 sessions, the therapist called out my parents for putting way too much pressure on me. She said I was perfectly normal for my age, with an average, healthy IQ, and that the real problem was the unrealistic expectations my parents had placed on me. Fast forward to now, my girlfriend joked that my mom probably invited me over just to ask for money. We even made a bet about it. Surprisingly, she lost the bet, because Mom didn't bring up money at all during that visit. But if I'm being honest, the way she's been checking in on me constantly lately, I can tell it's only a matter of time. Every time I get a text from Mom, my girlfriend playfully bets another $1 that it's about money. So far, I've been winning every bet, but I don't think my winning streak is going to last much longer. Just today, I got another message from Mom. She's inviting me for dinner this weekend. I can already feel that this is her way of buttering me up before asking for something. She's definitely trying to paint the perfect family picture before dropping the real reason for the dinner. Anyway, I'll update you all after the dinner. Gotta run for now. Bye. Update. Hey, everyone. So, I finally got the sweet revenge I didn't even know I needed. After what happened, I doubt my parents will be calling me again anytime soon. If you remember from my last post, Mom had texted me to invite me for dinner. I told her I was busy and couldn't make it, just to play a little hard to get. She kept insisting, so I finally asked her directly why she was suddenly being so nice to me, especially when Dad still thinks I'm earning money through shady or illegal means. She said the dinner was actually Dad's idea. Apparently, he wanted to make things right and apologize to me in person. She said he was proud of me now and wanted to show it. I was shocked for a second, but also suspicious. Then she casually mentioned that it wasn't going to be just the 4 of us. Nope. They had invited all the close friends and nearby relatives too. That's when it hit me. This was more like a public relations event than a dinner. I figured if they're going to make a show out of it, so will I. She asked me to be dressed nicely and to arrive on time. But the rebel in me came alive. So what did I do? I put on my gym sweatshirt, trekking shorts, and a cap. Not exactly the kind of outfit Asian parents want their kids wearing to a formal dinner, especially in front of relatives. It's practically a scandal in our culture. To make it better or worse, depending on how you look at it, I showed up 2 hours late. Mom was calling me over and over, probably in panic mode. I didn't answer any calls, just sent a quick text saying, "On my way." And that's how I got my revenge. Not through shouting or confrontation, but by flipping the script on the people who once made me feel like I was never good enough. I'll let you imagine how the dinner went. There were just a few messages from me saying I'd be late. No explanation, no excuse. I knew that alone would have made my parents furious. They have this obsession with appearing perfect in front of others. If even one guest was expected at our house, my parents would go into overdrive, cleaning every single corner for days, listing out fancy dishes to serve, making sure every object in the house was placed just right. When guests arrived, They'd bring out the expensive china, the ones only used on special occasions. If anyone stayed overnight, they'd get the softest pillows, the prettiest bed sheets, and anything else to make it seem like our home was straight out of a magazine. They always said it's part of our culture to treat guests with respect and care. And while some of that might be true, I've always felt like they overdid everything just to win approval and compliments from others. So it didn't surprise me when I walked into the restaurant that day. My parents had booked an entire rooftop section just to celebrate me. When I showed up in casual clothes, I saw the disapproving glance right away. But it was hidden behind a fake smile, like they were forcing themselves to be proud of me. Even though I now earn more than anyone else at that gathering, that smile from them didn't feel warm. It felt like a performance. They were annoyed by how I looked, but of course, they didn't say anything directly. They hugged me stiffly and raised a toast filled with compliments and exaggerated praise. It felt weird, especially when my dad hugged me for the first time in my life. Not comforting at all. I stood there, not feeling proud or happy, just confused and honestly kind of bitter. For a second, I wondered if I was the problem. Was I being ungrateful? Were they really just trying to celebrate me? Or had I been right all along about who they truly are? The room was packed with people, all looking at me like I was some kind of star. I almost thought about staying quiet, just eating and leaving. But then I heard them start to talk, really talk about my life. They began bragging about my achievements, my salary, my lifestyle, even my apartment. And then they crossed the line. They took full credit for it all. They claimed they shaped me into the successful person I am today. And just when I was about to lose it, my aunt, who never holds back, cut in. She looked right at them and said, "Didn't you two throw him out of the house?" I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing and clapped my hands in appreciation. Finally, someone had said it out loud. My parents looked humiliated for a second, but they quickly tried to twist the story. "We did it to teach him discipline," they said. "That's why he turned out so well." That was it. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Oh, absolutely," I said loudly. "I owe everything to my toxic parents. You know what their best decision was? Kicking me out and leaving me to survive on the streets. That was such a genius move." People in the room got quiet. I didn't stop. "You guys always knew I'd make it, right?" I said with a sarcastic smile. "Funny, because I remember something different. Weren't you the ones who said I'd become a homeless loser? A drug addict? Maybe even a criminal?" I looked straight at them. "Remember that time you took away my chance to go on a family vacation just because I didn't get good grades? You locked me up in the basement for days, with barely any food, and told me to study in that dark, suffocating room. That was your version of parenting." I turned to the guests. "Maybe all of you should try that too. Lock your kids up, cut them off, throw them out. Because clearly, that's the magical path to success." The silence in the room was heavy. No one had anything to say. And for the first time, I didn't care what they thought. I was done pretending. Done with the act.